handle him after that?
Yes.
Just open this stupid file. What's the problem? There we go. Okay. Lo,
come here.
somebody's gonna get
This is what happens.
spanky butt.
You don't spank your cat on.
Spanky Butch.
Oh, God. I forgot I have to log in on here. So I can't
All right. Handle him after that.
Yes.
All right. Looks like it's working on mine.
Stupid file. What's the problem?
Oh, my sound. It's so crisp. Yes, this pleases me. After weeks of shit sound.
And Lo is just meowing up a storm back there.
He's losing his fucking mind today.
Yeah, he gets addicted to the upside down.
We call outside the upside down because whenever he goes out there, fucking loses his shit.
Wait, so you guys took him on a walk and then he never recovered?
Yeah, I took him on a walk, and then I have like a little gate that I put out on the balcony that he can like kind of sit out there a little bit. But he tries to run away, and sometimes he does. So and he loses his privilege, his cat privilege. So
Bad boy.
He's inside right now, and he is not happy about it. He's a bad kitty. People don't believe me.
I believe you. I used to live with that motherfucker.
Yeah, he's a bad kitty. All right, Mel, can you see it on yours?
Almost there.
All right. It looks like it's good on mine. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna grab a couple drinks and then I'll be ready to go. On a walk, and then I have like a little gate that I put out on the balcony that he can like kind of sit out there a little bit. But he tries to run away, and sometimes he does, so he loses his privilege. Working?
Yeah.
Cool. Looks like we're ready to rock.
Cool.
You want to just get right to it since we got
yeah.
like a good 9-page questions today, so let's just get right to it, huh?
RP Plus is getting pretty popular nowadays.
It's this motherfucking Jan. When we met him, well, when I met him, you had already met him. When I met him in Vienna, I was like, why don't you post on the webinars? He was like, I don't know, this week, like 18 questions. I was like, you could have been titrating those questions. Now we have to like do all of them at once.
I'll answer Jan's questions right now. No, maybe, fuck you, go to hell, die.
Enough said.
Yep.
We'll get the German version out later.
For sure. Mel, are you saying hi to Jan?
Yeah.
All right. We'll get to Jan in a second. First up is James. Should I start reading them?
Yeah, hit it.
The man that will not let any mainframe alone, Mr. Daniel Hacker.
I got it.
Tell you with the jokes.
Oh, sorry. Real quick. Speaking of hackers, we saw Ready Player One last night.
Oh, what'd you think?
It was good. It was there was just like a ton of pop culture references in there. So if you're
Kurt Loder said that they were overwhelming.
Yeah, it's like if you're somebody who can follow all of the jokes on Family Guy, you're gonna like lose your mind. But
I'm gonna kill myself.
Yeah, it's like that where there's just so much. Like a lot of them are very obvious and a lot of them are very subtle. But it was good. I enjoyed it. It was fun. It was very lighthearted. Very Sword Art Online-y.
Yeah, Kurt Loder also described it as saccharin.
Saccharin?
Like excessively sweet but fake.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a good like just like lighthearted, turn your brain off for a little while. Like kind of pays a lot of fan service to like our age group.
Yeah. So, I think Kurt Loder also said it was like the amount of fan service was at times like laborious. It's like he was trying to squeeze as much 80s references into a scene as possible.
Yes. I mean, most of them went over my head too. So, and like given that we grew up at that time of
My babies too.
I mean, like I got a lot of them. I even like.
Go ahead.
No, I was just there's some like very subtle ones. Like there's a couple like, like very subtle things like you'll catch from like Terminator, and like even if they don't directly call attention to it, it might be something like a gesture or a line. You know what I mean? So it's like some of it's very like kind of Easter egg. That's the theme of the movie, Easter eggs. So
yes. I want to see it. I want to say I'm going to drag Crystal to go see it.
I heard Infinity War was like overwhelming.
Oh, in reviews?
Yeah, everyone so far has said it's just like a roller coaster of just emotions the whole time.
Oh my God, tough. But it was good?
Yeah, generally positive, but people have been saying like the ups and downs are just nutty. They said it was really funny, and most people said it. They felt exhausted at the end of the movie.
Yeah, hey, that's a good movie, man.
Yeah, so should be pretty interesting. I haven't seen it, but reviews look positive.
Awesome. All right, taking a stroll from the interesting to the not. Daniel Hacker's questions.
Nice.
Scenario, says Daniel Hacker. 2 athletes, either football, tennis, soccer, or etc. athletes who live for their sport but don't have lifting as their sport. Both diligently trained for their specific sport, resistance train regularly, and properly fatigue manage. However, in their resistance training, only one athlete solely does hypertrophy and strength phases, compound heavy basics, no fancy exercises, but no power phase or maximal strength phase, and they stay within the 4 to 12 rep range. The other athlete does hypertrophy, strength, and power. They also do conventional compound work, but include weightlifting derivatives, plyometric, and maximal strength peaking phase. Okay. How much different would the 2 athletes be? If an athlete nails their court/field sport training, weight trains regularly, fatigue manages, eats well, but never do maximal strength, weightlifting, plyometric moves, how much are they missing out on? Okay.
Can I start?
Yeah, absolutely. Fuck, I gotta remember. Okay, I gotta remember to say what I wanted. I don't want to say much on it, but I'm gonna say something after, so hit it.
Sure. Hopefully mine will spur more thoughts from you. So I think one thing that's worth noting is for kind of like beginner level athletes, if they're somebody who are relatively young in their training age, and by training age, I mean not just their sport training, but their resistance training stuff in general, the difference might be immeasurably small. There might not be any difference at all. Where you start to see a bigger gap is in the intermediate level development. And then in advanced athletes, it's a no-brainer. But what you will see for a lot of people, especially in sports that don't have a big speed or power component, is virtually no difference, because gaining more muscle mass and converting into strength is one of the easiest and most effective ways of producing force, which is the easiest way to get faster and more explosive. So for the large part, if for kind of beginners and low-level intermediates, those 2 programs would be largely the same. And then for advanced and moderate to higher level intermediates, it would start to diverge. So it would also depend, of course, if it's like a track and field type sport versus like, I'm trying to think of another example, but like more strength-based sports, the difference will be small. But for power speed-based sports, the difference will start to become more apparent as they become more trained.
Brilliant. 2 things to go off of James's point. In long-term sport periodization, what we actually do is arrange it exactly how James sort of implied, is that at the beginning of an athlete's weightlifting or weight training in conjunction with sport developmental career, almost all the training is hypertrophy to strength. As a matter of fact, some of it in the beginning is just essentially hypertrophy. And then as they get more and more advanced, there's less of an emphasis on hypertrophy training, more of an emphasis on strength, and particularly more of an emphasis on power, explosiveness, and peaking. There's an interesting early phase athletes. A lot of times you'll get them through a power phase, not to really express their power as much through the enhancement of power by the movements, but really just to drop the volume, drop the fatigue, but keep the muscle on and keep their movement quality sharp. And that's also here's what I was going to say earlier, or noted for myself to say. The differences between the athletes through the levels of advancement that will emerge, as James said, at least some of them are not going to be, because the athletes that use the strength power and the more power explosive modalities are really going to become that much more explosive or strong through those modalities. They're not. They will a little bit, but not much. It won't account for a ton of the performance difference. The real big difference is going to be that if you continue to do strength and hypertrophy training in conjunction with high-level sport training for incrementally more advanced athletes, that will eventually exceed their MRV and crush them.
Yep.
So a lot of times it's not that the athletes need a power phase, it's that they cannot do a hypertrophy phase while they're in season. Beginners can, intermediates maybe a strength phase, that not a hypertrophy phase, but in season for advanced, power is the only thing they can do because it is the only thing that conserves fitness adaptations, forget about even improving them, while dropping volume and thus mitigating fatigue. So I think the way you would first notice, if you really ran this experiment for long enough, starting with beginners, the way you would first notice is not that the advanced athletes would leave behind the, not that the full periodization cycle athletes with power phases would leave athletes that just did hypertrophy and strength behind. I think you would see first as the hypertrophy strength people just getting fucked with fatigue and then getting hurt, and then the other athletes not. James, thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think that's brilliant. And I think, you could building off what Mike said, I think for other sports, let's say like track and field, like sprinting, for example, a periodic hypertrophy phase might be okay, but the fatigue that you generate from that hypertrophy phase might exceed their MRV for them to even express really good technique and speed in their normal practice. So their maintenance volumes for some of that stuff might actually suffer at higher levels because they cannot maintain it with that type of training. So I think what Mike added to that was really good. And it's one of those, like, again, like if you're looking at like throwers versus like high jumpers, you might not see a huge difference in the beginning, but later on they're like, yeah, for sure, like the throwers can get away with doing a lot more just strength stuff and they'll be fine, but eventually they'll need to transition, whereas like the high jumpers and stuff will start benefiting more and more and more from that power type training earlier on. Yep,
100%. The more on the power/speed spectrum you are, away from general qualities like soccer or athletes, football athletes, and away from just being able to rely a lot on strength like throwers, the more you see that derivation.
Yeah, totally.
You can.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah, very. You think you can strength your way into being a really fucking good thrower? You can't strength your way into being a good high jumper while maintaining high training volumes. You're gonna have to drop.
Yes.
All right. Next question from Daniel. I've heard you both say time and time again that direct abdominal training is not necessary if one is doing compound lifts regularly. Okay. Just to be clear, what we're saying is it's not necessary for physique purposes. If you're lean enough, your abs will show through. It may very well be necessary for various sport purposes that require abdominal flexion or a generation of high intra-abdominal pressure. James, confirm?
Yes, but at the same time, it may not either. What we're saying is that that can cover a lot of bases for you. For somebody who has a particularly weak, trunk musculature, then yeah, you're going to have to do some extra stuff. But for most people, in my experience, once you can lift, a pretty reasonable amount of weight, such as like an intermediate lifter, you can start reducing a lot of the core training entirely, even for sport. And a lot of your sport training covers your core component too, which is great.
For sure. But there are for sure exceptions to this, right? Like,
yes,
if you want strong core flexion as a big part of your sport for whatever reason, you're going to have to train that shit because specificity.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So maybe if prepping for a show or getting really lean, some ab training is cool because it makes the musculature pop out more. Yeah, maybe. For some athletes, it might ruin their look. For example, for bikini girls and figure girls, they're not really looking for popping abs. If you're a bodybuilder, you already have popping abs and you don't need them to pop anymore, because just big abs can look interesting from the side poses and maybe not that great. Oh my God. Sorry. My computer wanted to, thank fucking God that didn't happen. My computer wanted to restart on me. Windows is like, hey man, time to restart. I'm like, no.
remember the good old XP days? Like, restart now? No.
You still
restart.
there, JMO?
What's that?
Okay, thank God. I said, oh, you're still there. That's good. Okay.
Yeah.
But riddle me this: direct ab training hurts. The pumps are definitely real, assuming someone is lean-ish. After doing ab work, if they lift up their shirt even hours after they're done training, the abs look more defined. So what's the deal? Is direct ab training really useless?
No.
Is it
that's
more a
not-
matter of context? I'm certainly not arguing for the weird off the balance type of work, but classic conventional spinal flexion and rotation stuff. So just really quick, rotation occurs primarily through muscles that are internal spinal muscles, and you will never see them. So you can have super jacked rotators, but you'll never see them. So careful about the rotation part. Weighted crunch variations, hanging leg raise variations, and some oblique twist variations. Personally, I don't do much of it all while massing, but when I'm cutting, especially when getting sub 10%, definitely have a good amount of stuff in there. I mean, I think like you got to juxtapose long-term development of the best physique possible with short-term how you look day to day and at the end of your cut. Like if you want the popping abs, see through the abs, a shirt club look, yeah, train your fucking abs and make them as big as you can so that when you're lean, they have that Ahmad Haidar circa 2005 look. If you don't know who that is, Google that name. And it'll come up with the best abs of all time. But yes, if you want the big ravioli abs, totally train the fuck out of them. But for bodybuilding, to be really technical, it's probably not a good idea. And if you kind of just do your thing and do a lot of compound moves, you're pretty good to go. For example, most CrossFitters, they do compound moves and gymnastics moves, and they don't train their abs a ton directly. They do some work, but they just have like abs on top of abs. And, all kinds of athletes that are lean enough really just don't have any shortages in the ab department. So I would, maybe James can add to this, but as far as time spent and MRV allotted, I don't know. You can go for it if you want. I just don't expect it to change a lot about your look. Nothing replaces leanness.
Yeah, absolutely. Leanness is definitely the overriding factor. I think what's worth noting, though, is like the trunk muscles respond largely like any other muscles. They're a little bit more slow twitch in nature just because they hold you up all day. But you train them just like anything else. And if you train them, they'll get bigger, right? And so sometimes you'll see people like CrossFit's a good example because sometimes you'll see some of the guys and even some of the girls where not only do they have crazy leanness and like the six-pack going, but their stomach and their abs actually stick out all the way around their body. Like there's actually like they protrude out. It's not just like that nice leanness in. It's like they're actually sticking out and they have kind of like a barrel of muscle around their waist, which I think looks cool. And that's how my stomach tends to look because I have big old just midsection. But what I think Mike is getting at is for bodybuilding purposes, that is not a good look to aspire to because it doesn't give you that nice tapered physique look, which is what most people want to emphasize, like their lats and their legs. So I think for bodybuilding, it's not a good choice unless your abs don't pop at all, which Mike, have you ever trained a male where their abs didn't pop out once they got lean enough?
Really rare. And
I've had some females like that.
Yeah, for sure. And then they may very well benefit from direct ab training in that case. Some of the males I've trained at very small waist sizes still don't have popping abs, but that's because they have fat still, and they genetically have just these teeny tiny waists so that once they do get their abs to pop, when they diet enough, it's like unbelievable because their waists are so small. So a lot of times people will be like, oh, I'm pretty lean all over, but my abs aren't popping. And I pull up your shirt. I look at it. And I'm like, dude, you have like the smallest bone structure in your waist ever. It's going to be amazing when you get lean enough. You just have to keep getting leaner.
Yeah. So it's like getting to Mike's previous point at the end. Like, is it worth your time to do a lot of stuff, in your MRV? I don't really think it is, unless like extreme vanity is what you're going for, and that would be like a non bodybuilding type extreme vanity, which is kind of funny to say.
Still fine, but do you?
Still fine, just weird. So yeah. I wouldn't bother.
Yeah. All right. One more question for this week from Daniel. There's an issue that's currently happening to me, and I'm curious if this has happened to you. Started a general focus mass following a maintenance and mini cut. Wanted to aim for 1.5 to 2 pounds a week added. Jesus Christ.
God.
Why? Started mass at 188. After the first week, I gained 2 to 3 pounds. No problem there. Since the mass is general, I'm accumulating for 5 weeks. The volume increases per week are nothing crazy. Off 2 sets per body part. The issue is after the first week, in my succeeding 2 weeks, I lost 2 to 3 pounds and seemingly can't stop eating. My training sessions are going fantastic, and I'm just getting the right amount of soreness each time. But what the hell is going on? Clearly, I need to increase calories, maybe 250, 300. Daniel, you have no idea what your tissue amounts actually are because the first several weeks of massing, and I mean like the first 3, the body water fluctuations are so insane.
You beat me to
you
it.
can't conclude dick. I'm in exactly the same boat right now. I finished my mini cut 2 days ago, weighing 233 or 2 point something pounds. After 1 day of massing, I was 235 pounds. Tomorrow, I'll probably be 238 pounds. By the early part of next week, I'll be 243 to 245. That's how long it takes me to fill out eating 600 grams of carbs per day at low fats. I just that depleted. So did I gain 10 pounds? Fuck no, I didn't gain 10 pounds. What is not concerning, but definitely something you have to amend, is that weight loss in the second or third week that you mentioned. That is not great, and it does not indicate that you are hypercaloric. Stabilization would have been nice. My other recommendation, maybe James can say more about this, is don't gain any more than 1 pound a week at your size. I think you're just going to get super fat for no fucking reason. So it'll be easier to gain the 1 pound a week that you need. You won't have to increase by as much. But if you're not meeting your weight goals, yeah, increase by 250 to 300 kcal for sure, James.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm reading too deeply into this. I'm wondering if he means, so like he said, after the first week I gained 2 to 3 pounds, and then he says after the first weigh-in in the succeeding 2 weeks I lost 2 to 3 pounds. I'm wondering if that's from his starting weight or after the initial 3 pound increase. You know what I mean? Because at that point, that's just a lot of body water fluctuation. That's just noise.
Yeah.
If it was below baseline, then yeah, you need to just eat more. You're experiencing that little bit of a plasticity in your metabolic rate, and you need to ramp it up a little bit.
Yeah, it's good that your training is going great, and that's really a good sign. But I think you should stick to 1 pound a week.
Yeah, more than that's kind of crazy. I mean, like it's good in the sense of like maxing out your muscle gains. It's bad in the sense of gaining a lot of excess fat in the process. So
there's a sweet spot there that I think for most individuals of not insane sizes is between half a pound to a pound of tissue per week. Anytime someone tells me they're gaining less than half a pound of tissue per week, I'm skeptical in the fact that they're gaining anything at all.
yeah,
Because you could just go months and definitely weeks without gaining shit, and you just wouldn't know it because of scale error, or just measurement error in general. And then anyone who gains muscle, and I have been one of these people numerous times, faster than 1 pound per week, it's just asking to be a fat piece of shit, which I have been numerous times, and so has James. And we've been down that road, so you don't have to.
I'm suffering the consequences of that as we speak.
There you go.
You know, it's fine though. It's one of those like if you enjoy that part of massing, because some people do, and especially for males, like you can drop weight relatively easily. So like if you want to enjoy your mass and go big, cool. Just know that it comes with the cost of losing that fat later.
Sure, but it's also like it's seemingly if you really have to struggle, then it's an inconvenience. The last thing you want to do is inconvenience yourself to do something that's suboptimal when the optimal is more convenient. You know what I mean? Like that's crazy. So,
and it's the optimal is also more time massing throughout the year, less time cutting.
Yep.
So.
Yep. All right, Jan Fries.
This motherfucker had like 10,000 questions.
From Germany. He says, I hope you do both well. James and I have done each other pretty well.
Oh, boy. That's for the podcast.
Oh, boy. Oh, yeah. Speaking of the podcast, so, folks, we recorded like 3 podcasts in a row. My sincerest apologies for the next 3 podcasts because they're full of very little information and a lot of hate. It's just that the questions we got for these, there were some good ones, but the majority were just so fucking stupid that we just couldn't stop hating. I couldn't do it. James actually, like after we recorded, James was like, I think we should do some more informative stuff next time. And Marcos was like, and I was like, I feel you guys. I don't know what happened, but I just went into a dark hole of shit talking.
It was tough because we had like Steve was on there, the Do You Even Lift guy, and you would think that people would have some really interesting things because he's been in powerlifting forever. He's been in strongman, like he has his own successful business. He's like a super big meme, like internet famous guy. You'd think they'd have interesting questions, and it was all about like, would you fuck a lift? Like
How big is your neck? Go fuck yourself.
Yeah, yeah. So I think like it might be good to have a few like, I don't want to say canned, but like a couple like more interesting discussion points, and then the rest can be stupid. Because it was all
100%.
stupid last time, right?
Yeah,
It was like
agreed.
too stupid.
It is pretty funny though.
It is funny.
All right. Jan Free says, I hope you guys are both doing well. Munich was fantastic. I hope you had safe travels, and the snakes tastes good. Of course, the snakes always taste good. If you're still up for the snake templates, I'm absolutely down for working on that project. Of course.
RP Schlange.
On a serious Schlange diet. On a serious note, 3 questions. One in regards to Mike's first presentation in Vienna, one regarding a client situation, and one current situation I found myself in recently.
All right.
Number 1, Mike stated, this is actually a simple one because I read ahead. Mike stated the inverted U curve for volume, MRV is at the top of it, being the highest volume that produces the most gains. But isn't the technical definition of MRV that from one microcycle to microcycle, you use all the capacities to recover and have nothing left for adaptation if you're training at MRV? Or was the context of the U curve without any time frame, so you barely recover till the next training session, the next week's microcycle, but realize the adaptations later in upcoming deload versus the usual micro to micro session? Yes, it was the latter. So that MRV being the top of the pyramid in gains is including the idea of functional overreaching. So basically, if I was a gambling man and someone told me, give me 1 session of training to produce the most growth you can in 1 session and not over multiple, I would probably train right at MRV. Training more than that doesn't make any goddamn sense. Training right at it, I think, would produce the most gains or close. Could there be an argument that training just shy of it would be better? Absolutely, and that's very well may be true. But it's going to be close enough for at least a rough chalkboard drawing demonstration of what is the best. Now, in any one point, MAV, maximum adaptive volume, is actually going to be the top of that little pyramid there, or the top of that U curve, and then MRV will be shortly after it. But I think at any one point, an average during your training cycle, including functional overreaching integrated, I think that MRV and MAV are going to be pretty close to each other. But there's a very big difference, to be super technical, between maximum adaptive volume that takes into account future training sessions and maximum adaptive volume at any one time. That maximum adaptive volume at any one time in the real training world is almost completely fucking useless, because when in training, you're going to be like, fuck it, I just have 1 session, James's favorite lyric, not miss my chance to blow this opportunity. Once in a lifetime.
Bring that up.
You know I have to. So, you know what I mean, James? It just doesn't make any goddamn sense to ask, like, what's the most maximum anabolic stimulus I can impose right now without any thought of, like, what about tomorrow? Like, it's like asking, like, how many steroids can I take to be the most jacked next week? Like, well, the answer is literally until your body fills up with oil and you just blow up. But, like, next week you're going to have problems gaining anything. So
yeah. So that was an excellent question and an excellent answer. And I think just to reiterate what Mike said, I think for practical purposes, the MRV and the MAV are going to eventually become almost indistinguishable. I mean, it might be the difference between like doing a couple more reps on 1 set versus, you know, like 12 reps versus 9 reps or something like that. Like for a practical purpose, it's hard to maybe differentiate those 2 things. So I think what Mike said was really good. And then like as you approach overreaching, assuming that you're going to continue training, the MAV and the MRV are going to be almost indistinguishable at some point.
Yeah. But again,
from like trying to quantify. I mean, there's obviously a theoretical point in which they are different, but then, like I said, it might be like 2 reps or 5 reps or something very difficult to actually differentiate.
For sure. But again, the question is, you know, why the hell would you ever, you know, that chart, Jan, that chart that I drew, that graph, was to illustrate an incredibly simple point. It was not what would be required of the equivalent drawing to talk about what you're addressing is a time series of those curves across the microcycle and mesocycle. There should be an insane level of complexity. So take that demonstration for what it was, and your stuff is completely on the money, and I hope I answered it pretty well, but it's just, it was never designed to illustrate that complicated of a concept.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah. Number 2, a client of mine recently did his maintenance phase after a few productive gaining mesos. Then he got sick with a bad cold in week 2, which lasted for almost 3 weeks. Holy shit.
Ouch.
Was he in Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom? And did he drink that fucking blood of whatever the fuck? I'm saying.
Jeez.
Don't drink the blood.
Kalima.
Kalima Shakti Dicks. Great. Amazing. Great. I got invited to speak in India later this year, and of course, James was the first person I asked to come with me, and he declined because he's a piece of shit. But that's neither here nor there. Your boy's number one fear is showing up, and that motherfucker, it's all like Temple of Doomed up. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to be short round. Actually, I think if they let me, I'm bringing Dougie, and he's for sure every single short round joke that can't ever be told will be told.
So I'm imagining you at the seminar, and it's like the room closing with the spikes on both sides, or like you get to, like you do your presentation, and you're like, okay, time for like roundtable questions, and they're like, no, it's Kalima time, and like a priest comes out, takes your heart out.
The post seminar meal is like monkey brains.
Monkey brains. Ugh.
Your boy's trying to get some protein. I'm like, hell yeah, girl, feed it up. I've had sushi before. This ain't nothing new.
Ugh. And then the monkey brains, the monkey's memories will become your own.
And you will live amongst them. Anyway, all right. The Euro guy overload. All right. So he got sick for 3 weeks. I think he trained 2 times in those 3 weeks with lower weights and less sets, even under his previous maintenance volume. Makes sense. Technically, he trained 1 week at maintenance volume and then 3 weeks without any training besides those 2 light sessions. God damn, he was out for 4 weeks.
He was fucked.
So that should resensitize him, and recover his passive structures to some extent. I think completely. There's no way he's left with any like tendon or anything damaged, unless he was like in a car accident the week before. He also got a huge increase in desire to train again. It makes sense under the positive outcome of a maintenance phase. But on the other hand, since he was sick, his body was in a permanently stressed state, which is obviously suboptimal for recovery. Yeah, some of that was for sure, but when your body recovers you back to feeling normal again, some of those days, as your body recovers more and more and more, it starts attending not just to sickness recovery, but other structure recovery. And actually, the entire time you're sick, you're still recovering various other structures. So being sick's not the best way to recover, but if you completely take time off during training, then especially structures like the bone and ligament and tendon, they will still recover, I think. Slower, but it is almost impossible to imagine the kind of disease condition you have to have for 3 weeks that would preclude all system recovery. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think like what's worth differentiating there is like physical recovery is still occurring from the training that he did previously, but like his performance will be impeded certainly as a result of the illness. So you can't expect that person to perform well or even at high workloads, but at the same time, they will be bouncing back slowly but surely.
Yep. This is an easy question to answer thing. Okay, sounds good. My question would be, should I restart his maintenance phase or go straight into gaining again? Or maybe I should start his maintenance phase but keep it shorter. What would be your recommendation in such a situation? Of course, easing him in with less sets, weight, and relative intensity for 1 to 2 weeks, regardless of what option I choose. I think because he was out for like 3 weeks, I think you could go the 1 to 2 week ease in and then another at least 2 weeks of maintenance / increasing volume through that time slowly, just as what we call, and this is a term I haven't used in a long time because I haven't worked with, no offense, athletes in a long time, just bodybuilders. That came out all wrong. The fitness return phase, right? This is basically what you need to point this fitness return, which is a term we use in sport training when athletes go home for the summer and play video games and they come back and there's a month left to go into season and they're like, what the fuck is training? You're not doing a maintenance phase because they're not maintaining. They're literally returning to fitness. So that's what this individual needs, which you start them with very low volume in week 1, a little bit more volume, a little bit more weight in week 2, so on and so on for about, I would say, 3 to 4 weeks. Well, curious to see what James says after this. And then he'll have all of the shit he lost back before the sickness back. And because you never hit those high volumes anyway, he'll be completely resensitized, even more so. And then he'll be ready to hit it. I'll tell you what, for the point in his phasic structure from masses and cuts and mini cuts that he got sick was almost ideal. Like he basically just had a prolonged active rest, but the activity was dying from the flu. James?
Yeah, I think that's really good. I would maybe even go slightly shorter on the return to fitness stuff, maybe like 2 weeks, and then just start his training volume, a little bit lower. Like obviously, if you're going up to like 8 to 12 reps, don't hit them with 4x8. To start like do your return to fitness, maybe like 2x5, 3x5, and then once you jump in reps, do like 2x8 or 3x8, something like that, and then ramp it up as you start getting into the mesocycle. I think either recommendation that Mike gave or I gave are both fine. I think you could probably expedite it a little bit. You don't have to do like a full on return to fitness. That's usually like when people, like Mike said, are pieces of shit and like been playing video games doing nothing, right? That's when you need to do a little bit more extended. But this guy seems like he's interested in training and is ready to go. So he'll tough out the pain of that switch from like 5s to 8s pretty quick.
Yeah, and also I think what's going to determine where you land between James' recommendation and mine is when are they, first of all, feeling their swag again, and second of all, when are they performing at the levels that you expect them to normally perform? If they're still kind of not performing super well, I wouldn't get into a mass phase just yet. Just keep them in maintenance. They're going to recomp as they regain lost muscle and lose whatever gained fat or just regain weight, because they probably just lost a bunch of weight. But when they're like doing normal shit, like normal weights, they feel good, getting pumps. You're not going to just go, okay, we still have to stay in maintenance. Like that's just pointless. They're already back. So then I think then open it up. But like if they're still on this huge momentum train of regaining muscle and strength without you increasing calories, there's just no need to increase calories yet.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. Okay. Number 3 from Jan. Regarding performance measurements from week to week, especially in the last meso, I have a hard time in later exercises of a session, which are most of the time isolation exercises. For example, I do a pull workout where I add 1 to 2 sets of back while also increasing loads and decreasing RIR, which works fine. But then in later stages of biceps training, I can most of the time only move last week's weight plus reps, even with lower RIR, though not only more volume on my back work, but also the increased relative intensity of it, which gasses out my biceps quite a bit. So would you consider that, quote unquote, over MRV, since my performance is the same, but with less RIR, so it's actually lower performance? No.
Those are two different things.
You have to demonstrate actual lower performance. So I don't think that's the case.
It's just increased
James, you agree?
Yeah. So performance is consistent. So performance would be essentially like the amount of weight you could lift or the amount of reps you could get at a certain weight. What you're experiencing is an increase in the relative intensity as the reps in reserve go down.
Yeah.
So that's okay. It's not exceeding your MRV necessarily, but if you start to see, instead of getting 10, 10, 10, you start seeing like 10, 7, 5, that would be an indicator of a decrease in performance and exceeding your MRV on biceps from doing all that back.
Yeah. Relative indices like that can predict when you're coming up to your MRV, but they can't tell you when you're at your MRV. We need hard data for that. Like you actually need to compare actual reps. So you could feel like you're approaching MRV, but then still hit a PR and be like, I guess I wasn't there. So it's a sign it's coming, but it's definitely not the same thing.
I think what is a reasonable thing you could do, Jan, is if you notice that your performance stays constant and your reps in reserve are going down, what you can therefore assume is that the next week that you train that same workout, you're not going to progress much on your biceps at all. You're just going to keep doing what you were doing the last time, because your reps in reserve are probably already above what you thought they should have been at. And so that would be a reasonable way of managing that fatigue.
Yep. Okay. This is actually a really awesome question as predicted. And because Jan asked the good ones, like a lot of you folks do. This is a really good point at which we want to point out, and this is something that is covered extensively in the Volume Landmarks book. There are different time courses of MRV definition. And this is one where 2 of them are cross-contaminating each other. What Jan is going through with his back and bicep training on the same day at the same session is that his bicep training is starting to push up into his intra-session MRV, right? Because intra-session MRV is basically defined as, can you squeeze all of your shit into one session without like the first part of your session fucking you so bad you can't do the second? For example, if you deadlift and then squat afterwards, there is a certain amount of deadlifts you do that even if you can recover week to week, you just can't do your normal squats after. You just want to die or just bleed to death in the gym or just yell. You know what I'm talking about, James?
Yeah, you just physically cannot produce the force with that technique. Yeah, it's just not going to happen.
That's it. And it's not that your weekly volumes are off. It's that you're just trying to do more than you can chew within the session. And this also leads to two potential developments in why we program differently for very advanced athletes, very advanced bodybuilders. One of those potential programming changes is prioritization phases. This is why sometimes you prioritize back as an advanced athlete. Sometimes you prioritize biceps, but you're probably not prioritizing both, because how the fuck are you going to do that? If you prioritize both, you just run out of room within each session. And the second possibility, maybe I'm missing some, James can add in, the second possibility is splitting sessions in the day. So Jared Feather, for example, just simply never runs into this problem anymore because he always splits his back and bicep training into completely different times, 6 to 8 hours apart. So he's always fresh for biceps. So this is one of those situations where, like, you didn't ask this, but if you asked, like, what's a workaround to this, those are the workarounds, like priority phases or splitting your sessions. And if you couldn't do either one of those or didn't want to, there is no workaround. You're simply exceeding your intra-session MRV. James?
The only thing I would add would maybe be increasing the frequency at which you train biceps, so that you instead of having to do 4 sets after back, you might only have to do like 2 or 3 because you're training biceps again later in the week, and so you can maintain a better quality. But you can't do that with all muscle groups. Biceps is one that you can, but you certainly might not be able to do that with like quads or hamstrings or even pecs. It might not be possible. So biceps maybe.
Yep. I have side delt, rear delt emphasis arm workouts, and then bicep emphasis arm workouts. And sometimes I find that the bicep emphasis arm workouts are better after my push days, because I do them 4 times a week total. So 2 push days, I do my bicep emphasis. And on the 2 pulling days after that, I do my side delt emphasis, because you don't really use your side delts when you do pulling, like rowing and shit like that.
Right.
But you really use the fuck out of your biceps. So at some point, it's like after a real big back workout, it's just kind of pointless for me to try to train biceps, because I ran into this very obvious issue.
Yeah, and I think for, like novice intermediates, it's less of an issue, and you probably actually get more growth doing both on the same day. But I think for higher intermediates and towards advanced, that you have to start finding strategies to split them up.
100%. All right. Jan says, when you do answer those questions, I'm currently sleeping at least 9 hours, recovering from my week 4 push session tomorrow. If you don't hear from me anymore, I died.
All right. Easy enough.
Don't die, Jan. Oh, look, he didn't die. More questions.
Yeah, I'm telling you, this guy had like 18 questions this week.
All right. So, hey, Docs, didn't make it in last week's questions because I did post too late, so you maybe have me twice this week. Boom. He goes, or it's too late again, and I'm not sure what time point you make the cut this week. Like, sorry, Jan, it's too late every week. He's like, don't they roll over? Like, nope, not for you.
Just for a reference point, I usually compile them somewhere between noon and like 2 o'clock on the day of the webinar, which is Tuesday. So noon and 2 o'clock California time, Pacific time. So that's usually the cutoff.
There you go. Now you know. Nevertheless, more questions. Number 1, drastic weight increase in the last accumulation microcycle. I observed this with clients, and the last 2 gaining mesos also with myself. I assume it's due to inflammation, accumulated stress. I think so. Are there other physiological reasons for that to happen? When you get really advanced and training is systemically really hard, you can actually lose weight in the last accumulation microcycle, because the degree of overreaching starts to shut down your appetite, and the workouts are so physically disturbing, even in the acute term, that you don't get your appetite back for hours until after they're over, and it just really makes eating hard. But you'll see both. This is one of the reasons why James and I stress so much that week to week weight stuff, especially on mass, it's just not anything super important. It's got to be tracked so you can see longer trends. But like, if you're like, I'll tell you guys this, and a lot of you are coaches, one of the most interesting emails to get from clients, and I'm using the very charitable term interesting, is, hey, I gained three pounds this week. What's up? It's like, if I had to list you a number of factors that could be potentiated by, it would be like 1 million, maybe more.
Like, did you poop? No. There you go.
Snake diet.
Yeah. Also, okay. One thing, this is going to be maybe a little not PC.
Here we go. Here we go, James.
Yeah. Yep. So I get this one a lot with my clients, particularly the female clients where their weights will spike up and they'll be like, oh, it's so much inflammation. Maybe that's possible.
Maybe.
Another thing is like menstrual cycle. A lot of times people conveniently forget to tell you that, and they'll just like have a bloop little like weird weight spike, and they'll be like, so much inflammation. Like, no, you're menstruating. They're like, oh yeah, ha ha ha. Why do I know that and you don't know that? I don't know, but that is one thing to keep an eye out for, and that's a female specific one, obviously.
Yep, for sure. All right, number 2, mini cut questions. Oof. You recommend a 1% weight loss per week on a mini cut. What are your opinions on higher rates of loss, like up to 1.5% per week if you're on the higher side of body fat? More towards 16 to 20 when you start your mini cut. Oh man, I'm really well prepared for this question because I just had a powwow with Jared Feather yesterday, and we don't tell anyone. If I see any of you motherfuckers post this in public, I swear to God, Jared and I.
You gotta be careful because people post stuff. I've seen that people post what we have said, not even like written down, but like we'll say something and then I'll see like an infographic about it like a day or two later.
Yeah, Jared and I are not gonna write a mini cut mini ebook, okay? But in an alternate universe, we might be doing it. In any case,
wait a minute, that was confusing. Were you
giving good
face there or no? I couldn't tell.
Say that again.
Were you like, was that like winky face? We're not writing a mini ebook or
very winky face. I'm trying to be as confusing as possible, so there's plausible deniability.
Thank God, because we can stop answering these fucking mini.
No, seriously, that's the only reason we're writing the book. It is because we're tired of like on Instagram. It's like, here's a picture of me and my fiance, Dr. Crystal, at a park. They're like, so on a mini cut. I'm like,
okay. Here's my favorite one where it's like, we've answered like mini cut questions 1,000 times and somebody will be like, so on this thing, you said this, but I think I'm different. What do you think of that?
Yeah.
It's like, no, you're not. It's the same.
Your gold stars in the mail, sir.
Remember what we said before? That applies to you. But yeah, but no, but yes.
Yeah. So in any case, here's the deal. Here's one of the things Jared and I talked about. In some hypothetical scenarios, up to 1.5% can be possible. Here's the deal. The reason we use mini cuts are really kind of twofold, two major reasons, lots of smaller ones. Number one is to reduce body fat levels so that we can open up more room, so to speak, for massing in the physical sense. And of course, in the nutritional sense with sensitivity. But on that note of sensitivity, we're also trying to keep mini cut volumes as low as possible because we are trying to reduce the anabolic resistance from nutritional factors and through high volume weight training. So we're trying to mini cut and sort of train at minimum effective volume. What really on a mini cut ends up being your maintenance. Mini cut maintenance volume is kind of your minimum effective volume when you're normally maintaining or massing or something. So being that we're trying to maintain low volumes, if you go up to 1.5% or even higher on a mini cut, the amount of anabolic sort of counter-regulatory pressure you have to apply in order not to lose muscle mass, like the amount of training you have to do in order to not lose muscle mass at that body weight or at that body weight percent loss, would start to look like between your MEV and MRV. That's just normal training. And then what the fuck is the purpose of the mini cut? You have literally
just cutting at that point, right?
Right, so you're just cutting. You cut off one of the heads already of the mini cut two-headed dragon. And then the poor fucker, seeing his, brother just got his head cut off. He's extra pissed. So you're going to get lean, right? But then again, and this comes back to the second point, is another thing Jared and I talked about. If you are closer to 20% or 22 or whatever, and Jared sees a lot of this stuff with clients, you do not need a mini cut. You need a cut. You're very explicit here. A mini cut is for relatively lean individuals to potentiate another round of massing. It is not for the purpose of enhancing your body composition in any very meaningful way. Like you look very similar from mini cut to the end of mini cut. You're just a couple percent fat. If you have 8% fat to get rid of, that's not a mini cut.
Yeah.
So the way to do that is not 1.5% per week, because then that obviates a whole part of the mini cut. If you're that fat or you want to get that much leaner, whichever combination of those is true, you need to do something like an actual cut. What Jared Feather would probably recommend if you were his client, something like 8-week cut. 8-week cut at 1% per week That's a whole lot of fucking body fat. After all the water, muscle way out, that might be 6% body fat. If you're at 16%, shit, you're at 10% after an 8-week cut. Perfect time for massing. But that's an 8-week cut. That's not a mini cut anymore. And that's going to have its own fatigue dissolution, its own things you do afterwards. So you're not just going to be able to do that 8-week cut and then go into a full episode of massing. You might do a little bit of massing and then sort of a little maintenance and then more massing after, et cetera, et cetera. Don't worry, that'll all be written out very explicitly when we do put that thing out. I'm not sure when it's coming. So if anyone asks, I never fucking said anything. But I hope you get the gist of that. It's one of those, like, if you have to go 1.5%, the amount of training volume you have to do, it literally just it cancels out the whole half of why you mini cutting in the first place, and sort of TLDR, kind of serve it to your face rudeness, Hofmanistani style.
Yes.
If you need the 1.5% per week, you don't need a mini cut anymore. You need a cut.
Just cut. So I have a client who I do mini cuts with, and she's one of the very few that I do. But her situation is that she's like a super hard gainer. She is around 100 pounds at any given time. We mass up to about 107, and she still has abs. We mini cut back down to about 100, and then we go up again from there. And she still has abs the whole time. Not when you're somebody like me who weighs 230 pounds at roughly 20% body fat. That's not mini cuttable. I got to get my fat ass into a regular cut and get my weight down.
Yep. And that's actually just for future reference, and this is something we'll of course include at some point. The mini cut is not an infinitely usable tool. Jared and I calculate or speculate that you're good for about two mini cut cycles, maybe mini cut and mass juxtapositions in a row, until it's time for a full maintenance, probably a full cut, and then a reset.
Because then I think people, this is what I've been saying, and I'm glad you brought this up, because I think people basically do the peaks and valleys where they make no net progress, right? They go up, they go down, they go up, they go down, and they make no progress, right? If you're doing the mass properly, you should be slanting upwards over time, and you're going to be accumulating a little bit of fat over time. So if you are able to mini cut and mass and not without having to actually do a regular cut after a long time, you're probably not doing one of those right.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought 100%. That up.
Yeah, and mini cutting just doesn't resensitize you completely like a real maintenance phase does and a real low volume phase does. So it buys you more time, and that's good, but it doesn't buy you infinity time. And unfortunately, the amount of time it buys you shrinks until it buys you just as much time as the mini cut lasts, is that it's purposeless to do another mini cut. So, and then if you continue to mini cut after that, you do exactly what James says, is each mini cut buys you just enough massing to cancel itself out. And then you just end up doing this. And then you can recomp over the long term, but that's just the shitty way of doing things because you're not gaining weight on the net balance.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, great if you're skinny fat and you want to get to skinny.
Totally. All right. The hipster diet. All right. It's like, do you have a cardigan sweater, but your gut is not poking through it? We can fix that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Do you want to go from hot dog to beef jerky?
Oh, I know exactly the physique you mean on hot dog.
I'm going to get some hate for that one.
I like that hipsters have made having a ridiculously and universally unattractive physique cool again. Which is just great. Like, why not wear tight clothes if you have a little bit of some shit going on, or a lot? But that's great. I don't think people should be covering their shit up with sweats. It's just interesting that that happened. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just impressive sociologically, being how universal body image, body image concerns are, and how universal body types are. It's just impressive that, like, if you're a hipster dude and you've got like some just whatever, like what is that, like a garbage bag body, basically.
Garbage bag.
You know what I'm talking about, James? I think you probably coined that term. Just lumps everywhere and it's kind of some shit. And you wear like tight sweaters over it and super skinny jeans, and like your love handles like pour out of the skinny jeans. Like, it's just impressive that kind of person is like considered just well in the mainstream of attractive to hipster girls. It's like, damn, dude, we've really come a long way. That's not bad. It's sweet, each his own.
very non-threatening, very like over aggressive male persona. It's very like beta, right? So they're not like, oh, this guy's not
Yeah.
gonna like smack me around. He's
Totally, and they're probably right. And I get it too. Like when I show up to like some kind of bar or club, which has happened, I don't know how years or something, even like a restaurant or whatever. Like you and I, James, we don't look like we're like sensitive, caring listeners, even though we are.
I have the like male bitch face where everyone thinks that I'm mad all the time, and I'm not.
Totally. Everyone just assumes I'm homicidal all the time. People are telling me like, I thought you were really mean. I was like, why? And they're like, I don't know. You like, what the hell's wrong with the way your head's shaped? I'm like, right.
Like,
I hear you.
It's
on
getting
that.
awfully personal.
Yeah, right. I'll be mean to you, asshole. Anyway.
So like for me, like the hipster thing's kind of weird because like when somebody is like presenting their outward appearance, that's it's a reflection of themselves in some way. But some people will have kind of one where they're like, oh wow, they have really body karate, right? Where they're just like, wow, they got a banging body, but yeah, they're like the way they dress, the way they kind of like do their hair or their makeup or their facial hair, or whatever. You're like, it looks stupid. Like that's like the prototypical hipster, right? Now it's like you have the bad outward image of how you do yourself, and then also bad body on top of it. And you're like, now you're like 0 for 2. I don't get that. Like you got to have one going. You got to, if you have like if you got maybe not the best body going, like a lot of people will dress really nice and look really good, and you're like, damn, what's up? Even if you're not the most fit looking person, but 0 for 2, I don't get it.
The new nice dressing, James, is ironically dressing to look like shit.
I guess that's what I don't understand. Like I've seen people with not the greatest bodies look great in the right outfits. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I don't
Looking
know.
great is so 2017, James. You got to be in the new world now.
I'm like a fucking dinosaur over here. What am I thinking?
Yeah, you and me both. All right. Jan's question named Jan. 2.1 to distinguish it from question 2 and 3. All right. I did a mini cut at the end of 2017, and I programmed it to be slightly higher than my hypercaloric MEV. Okay. To counterbalance the higher catabolism, since I went with 1.5% weight loss in a week versus recommended 1% to land around my V in a hypercaloric condition. Perfect. I did indeed make 10 RM progress over that 6-week mini cut period, so I can assume that those set numbers were over my hypercaloric MEV, correct? Yes, correct. Yes. They were. But also remember that there's a difference between making progress and making optimal progress. And maybe if you had stuck to 1% and dieted longer, you would have had even better results. And again, that 1.5% might have worked for you at that developmental age, but the more advanced you get, the less you can get away with that 1.5 type of shit. I'll tell you what, Jared, I was going to include potentially 1.5% in the guidelines for mini cuts, and Jared would probably kill me if I do that. He thinks 1.0 is just irresponsible to recommend anything after that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to say you got away with it this time, but you might not get away with it later on, right? Where you lost a lot of weight and you actually got stronger, which is basically about as good as it gets. But as you get more and more trained, that will likely change and decrease in probability.
Yep. Just a real quick, not philosophical, but a very important training and diet, broad strokes tangent. I think it is much more important for us to ask. I think that clearly I'm not going to be the one to shit on the concept of optimality. We're always looking for it. I think the more relevant point to optimality is what's going to set me up in a really thoughtful, periodized style for the best long-term progress, not necessarily what's going to get me the fastest short-term results. Though both are valid to ask, I think true optimization is long-term. So when people ask questions like, okay, so if 1.5% is good, maybe 2%, et cetera, a lot of people, and you're not one of these people, they're always just trying to bite off as much fat loss per week as they can chew. And they're like, but I want to be optimal, right? I want to lose as much as possible without losing muscle. And it's like, there are ways to lose 1.5% and 2% without losing muscle in the short term, but it's going to fuck you in the ass long term when you've just not been resensitizing at all, but just completely desensitizing because of, just a hypocaloric condition activates AMPK in your muscles. Okay, it literally is fatigue causing. It literally counteracts mTOR. So it's one of those situations where I think it's best to ask Okay, for a mini cut, for it to work in its purpose of potentiating future muscle mass, all the ways that it does that, what's the optimal rate? Not can I get away with just checking off the list? Okay, I did a mini cut, I didn't lose muscle. What's the fastest I could gain? That question is different than the one that potentiates the later stuff.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Mike. I think people can take the same idea and go the opposite extreme, which is why we see the bro splits being so apparent, where they say like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to need to be able to do the bro splits at some point, so I might as well start now. Well, it's like, well, that's not optimal now. It's optimal later. So there's definitely some middle ground, right? Where it's like you want to set up good habits and good strategies, but you also need to be aware that those will change over time.
100%. Number 3, I'm currently doing a 4-to-1 paradigm of accumulation to deload. I can basically add at least 2 up to 3, and then smaller muscles like my biceps, side, and rear delts up to 4 sets a week and still recover fine. MAVs around 9 to 14, MRVs around 15 to 26. Cool. Lower end of both for lower body muscle, especially hamstrings. Yep, me too. I don't know anyone with a hamstring that's doing the movements right that has a hamstring MRV of more than 20. I've never seen that in my entire life. I would love to see someone do 4 by 5 sets of stiff legged deadlifts a week and not die.
I mean, at that point, if you're just doing like hamstring curls, like not even the lying ones, like the seated ham curls, maybe, but
partial ROM or something.
Yeah, you're just wasting your time anyway. So
yeah,
it's irrelevant.
I wish all training was like hamstring training. I do 4 sets of good mornings early in the week, and I do 4 or 5 sets of leg curls later. And hamstrings have been growing my entire life from that.
I love hamstring training. They're so fast twitch. You do like 3 sets of like, 4 to 8, and you're golden.
Yeah, and tracking progress is super easy because you just do basically just resistance. That's it.
Yeah, it's a bitch when you do like the high volume phases. Like if you do like a metabolite phase and you got to do like higher rep stuff. Oh God, kill me. Horrible.
Yeah, I get into a thing with hamstrings where if I do leg curls with short enough rest breaks or high enough reps, I accumulate so much lactic acid in the muscle that there is no comfortable position for up to 5 minutes on end, and I chronically either accumulate and or continue to store as much lactic acid as after I finish the set. So I'm in like pure, like literally like just agony. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? What's wrong with me? And it's because the muscle is so fast twitch dominant. It's so poorly vascularized that there's just at some point, if it's fatigued enough, there's just not enough movement versus production. Which really
there's no recovering from that. It's just you're fucked. You gotta sit down for a while.
For sure. All right. So then he says, I'm still on my way to find my true MRV values, currently pushing on average a set or so every mesocycle. Cool. I didn't drop performance on my last 2 mesos, but systemic fatigue in the last micro, especially the other half, was quite high. Okay, that's something. But not too high to apply full overload again. Okay, that's good. Since I never did the MEV cycle, the MEV finding cycle, those MEV values are just also estimations based on past training experience with fixed set numbers and also other variables that correlate with MEV like pumps, stiffness, or even slight soreness. The following 1 to 2 days, subjective rating of training, effort, and fatigue around 6 or 7 or so. Perfect. So since I still have this huge MEV to MRV adaptation window and the possibility of it being even larger is not unlikely, also depending on your answer to question 2.1, do you think I should jump to a 5-to-1 ratio? I think it's absolutely worth a try. James, what do you think?
Yeah, totally. I would say do it until you've proven otherwise.
Yeah, and then go to 4-1 after that. Yeah, for sure. The longer you can maintain, so long as you begin at minimum effective volume and you end at MRV, the longer the window of accumulation that you can have, the better. I mean, like if you could have a 16-to-1, that'd be fucking amazing. You just never survive it.
I would love to do 5-to-1. I just can't.
Same here. Nobody really likes deload weeks. I think we're all on the same page on that. I really like the 4-to-1, and I'm making good progress on my 10 RMs per exercise, also over multiple sets per meso, around 2.5 to 5 kilogram in the compound basics. You mentioned that. You mentioned that in Landmark's book that lifters in that situation could benefit of a slightly less aggressive volume progression week to week and a longer accumulation to deload ratio, not only to have more training over time, but the year, but also better maintenance of gains. Why the latter? I'm not sure. I'd have to reread Jan the context.
I can think of a really simple answer of better maintenance of gains is simply just more time spent training, less time spent doing active recovery. Which, although that's pretty minimal risk, it's still a slight risk nonetheless.
Yeah. Also, I just remembered why there's a why the latter. Ooh, and he gets it actually, or pretty close. Why the latter? I assume through directed adaptation principle caused by training at those higher volumes of pushing MRV for longer than Mike. Or yes,
Yes.
not just those volumes, but those intensities. So like, if you squatted like, we'll just use in kilos. If your best squat is 150 kilos for 3x10, and the way you do is like super fatigue manipulation, but you do 10 kilo jumps. You do 110, 120, 130, 140, 150, and then deload. You just reached out and touched 150 one time. You can't really say that you're stably able to squat 150 for 10s because you've only ever done it once. But if you did, 140, 42.5, 45, 47.5, 50, God damn, you've had a lot of circa 150 training, and you're not just going to lose that. Whatever it is you got out of 150, you got very similar benefits from all those other ones. So that's why we don't like to. James may be able to speak for himself on the matter, but I don't like programs that overload in a too pulsatile fashion, because you can never be sure if that person really maintained that quality or not, or even that you trained it long enough for it to settle in. Like I program for my fiance every now and again for powerlifting. I like her to make pretty small jumps week to week to really hammer in the fact that, yes, we are doing around 275 pounds, 4 reps in the high bar squat. Yes, it's 260, 265, 270, 275, 280. I know that when we recycle, she's going to be good for around 275 for reps. But if we, went up by 10s and we really managed fatigue or volume to counteract that, then, it was like 255, 265, 275, then deload. Man, it's just not enough time in that hover area at the top to really settle in, and thus I think there's a possible high chance of loss. James?
I think your point is bolstered when you are training for strength, like your example with Crystal.
Totally.
I think because I know there's a big gap. Like if you haven't been deadlifting heavy, like if you've just been doing stiff leg deadlifts and good mornings for a while, and you want to try and do regular deadlifts, yeah, your best lift might have been like 250 kilos for a couple reps. There's no way in hell you're going to be even remotely close to that without shitting yourself if you don't have several mesocycles of regular deadlift progressing up to that. If you haven't done it in a while and you just try and do it, you might be able to pull it off, and that's great. Or you might actually literally crap yourself, and that could be really bad. So for me, if I'm trying to do heavy stuff, especially in the deadlift, I take 2 or 3 preparatory mesos of lifting heavy in the deadlift before I start going for 5s or 3s.
For sure. And Jan, you can actually expand this point to other adaptive qualities and through other modalities like body weight. Like if you reached 90 kilos one time on your mass phase through a mega bloat and then went back down to 87, the next time you mass, you might only succeed in hanging out at 90 kilos for 2 weight sessions in a row or 3 weeks in a row and then gas out and have to drop. But if you get up to 90 and week on week on week you maintain it, it's going to be a readjustment of your muscle and total weight settling point, to where even if you cut down from there, you're going to have a much easier shot coming up. That's one of the big logical points behind the maintenance phase, is to basically let you adjust to new body weights and muscle sizes so that you don't just crap them back out the other end when you cut back down.
Absolutely.
This is something that's nearly universal reported by bodybuilders. When they gain in a new weight, they'll say just hanging around that weight, training and eating for weeks, if not longer. Every time I do that, I bring more muscle into a show. If I don't do that, it just seems like the muscle I gain just doesn't really stick. And then towards the end of dieting, I seem to just lose it all.
Take that
for what it is. Yeah, for real, right? You do all that massing, and then you're like, "Death, dick happened." But I was big once. So that was cool.
Yeah.
All right. Aria, how would you structure IRR progression over those 5 weeks? I mean, the normal way. So start with 4 RIR, and then the next week maybe 4/3 RIR, the next week 3/4 RIR, then 2, then 1, then whatever. James, any thoughts? It doesn't have to match an exact number, just relative.
I think what would be very reasonable would be to do 4-3-2-2-1, something like that.
Totally.
2 is a great training number, and a couple weeks of that, you're going to have some awesome training, but it's also not one, which, you know, you're not really recovering very well from that. So you can double up. And I mean, like you could, like Mike said, you can kind of be in between, but I think it doesn't have to be something crazy. As long as it's not like 4, 4, 4, 4, 3 or something
For
like
sure.
that. You're good.
Just a linear or like a sort of modified exponent, that is totally fine. You can do like a sort of a hyperbolic one, which is actually programmed into the male physique templates. We expect rapid adaptation in the first week just because of a huge neurological acclimatization effect to new movements, right? So there's a big jump between the first week and the second week, and then smaller jumps after that. So that's definitely a thing. Some other people would stay a little shy, maybe 2 reps shy of failure all the way up to their last week, and then go to straight failure in their last week. Many ways to do it. Just don't do anything that doesn't make any goddamn sense, which would look something like James said, or 4 from fail, 1 from fail, -5 from fail, and -8 from fail. That's how you really got to do it.
The only one thing real quick, you might not be able to do a purely linear progression in the absolute intensity. You might not be able to add 2.5 kilos each week. You might have to double up every now and again, do the same weights, just because it's such a long time that you might pop yourself out of that optimal rep range for the RIR that you have.
That is, James, a super good point. One way in which I do this myself every now and again, pick a weight, 30 kilograms. First week, 30 for 10s. Second week, 30 for 11s or 12s. Third week, 32.5 for 11s or 12s. Fourth week, 35 for 11s or 12s. And then that's to failure. And then we reduce. So on and so forth. So sometimes you might have to do just reps or even just sets, and then sometimes weight. So Jan, it's really quite simple. You got to start with your MEV, and then you have to be deciding in your own judicious, knowing your own body, being realistic, what you really think is going to just gas you out at the very end of the progression, but no sooner and no later. And remember, you can always adjust it. So for example, if your second to last week is way too easy, just fuck yourself up in the last week. But you don't want the reverse to happen. So I think James and I would both advise be conservative in the early phases of a mesocycle. Too conservative is better than not. And then get more aggressive potentially if you need as the mesocycle progresses. It's easy to up the ante. It's very easy to step back. Upping the ante just addresses the issues as needed, but backing off leaves you with residual fatigue that you can't do anything about, and you might have to just deload.
Yes, well said.
Yahoo. All right. Rene Caraco.
Rene Caraco.
That was excellent Brazilian, James. All right.
I've been practicing.
I've been practicing, nice. How do you guys adjust intra-workout carbs during Meso 3 strength phase? Should I follow the template guidelines for rep count? Or is this only for hypertrophy? I think following template guidelines is never going to be a problem. You can adjust the stuff yourself if you want on an as-needed basis, but I don't think the templates will ever steer you too wrong. Just one addendum, the templates are designed for the general mass public consumption, so if you are privy to a bit of knowledge about yourself / advanced nutritional knowledge, please feel free to use that to enhance your performance.
Yeah. And if you treat Meso 3 more like a strength phase, like push the volume a little bit higher, you might not have to adjust very much at all. If you treat it like the resensitization phase that it is, then you might need a little adjustments, and I would go based on what the template recommends.
Yep. Hey guys, Renee asks again. I'm on my 2-month trip to Europe. Oh, 2-month trip to Europe is coming up. Hello, European person.
We just got back from 3 weeks in Europe. I don't know how you're going to do 2 months. Jesus.
Fucking God. You're going to be smoking a lot of cigarettes, Renee.
Prepare for sausage.
Sausage. My current plan is to maintain while I'm there.
Good plan.
I come back in July, do a mini cut or full-blown cut. I guess this just depends on my body fat level when I return.
Yep.
Then I would mass from end of August to end of November, then maintain in December to begin my next cut by 2019. I would recommend a very super slow, like 1/2 a kilo or 1/4 of a kilo per week cut when you come back, mixed in with incrementally raising the volumes, because I think after that long of a maintenance phase, you're going to be recomping like crazy. So what I would like to see from you, if you were my client, is in July to basically lose a couple of kilos of body weight, maybe 2 or even just 1, while increasing your muscle mass and radically increasing your leanness. James, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a good strategy. I mean, like
That's a
2
return to fitness mesocycle.
That's a true return to fitness, exactly. And yeah, I agree with you, Mike. I think he's going to probably be recomping quite a bit after being gone for that long. Because let's face it, you're going to do your best with the training while you're in Europe, but you're not going to be training 6 days a week, right? So you're going to be deconditioning to a small extent. Hopefully not, but to a smaller degree, you will be. So you will experience that. I think that's a great strategy. I don't have anything to add.
Yeah, and Renee, remember, you're from that long of maintenance, your minimum effective volume is going to be so small. Do not bite off more than you can chew. You're going to be super excited. You're going to look a little not your best, so you're going to want to come back. And the first week, you're just going to want to fuck shit up. Don't do it.
European girls don't mind if you don't look your best.
They probably, like hipster girls, prefer it, in fact.
Especially if you smoke. Maybe if you play the tuba or the trombone, that might sort
There's a problem with American is they care too much about everything, including the body. Look at these fucking Barbie Beach Boys. And that's it. You're getting Euro girls and guys, I'm sure, stat.
Did we mention the waiter guy who razzed Jan about being he assumed that Jan was American and rushing him, but in fact was not, was German?
Amazing. So we were at a restaurant in Austria, and Jan was with us, and this guy who Brad Schoenfeld apparently interacted with him also when he was at a seminar there. He was like a waiter at a traditional Austrian restaurant. He's the guy it's just an old man who just doesn't give a shit, so he talks like shit in a loving way, I guess, to patrons. And Jan was like, "Hey, can you modify this or that order?" And he like wanted to order to go in after people already ordered, and he was actually doing a favor for the Italian guy, which was nice. And the guy's like, "Oh, you expect me to just do this? It's not just all right away done. This isn't McDonald's like America." And Jan's like,
It was amazing because he was literally like, "This isn't America where it's like ba 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 ba," and Jan was looking at him like, "Dude, I'm not American. Those American. Guys are. I'm not."
But funny enough, the stereotype applies at least as much to Germany. So could have said this isn't Germany, Jan would be like, "Yo, true respect."
Poor Jan. That guy was razzing him.
That guy was a piece of shit. I hate that guy. All right. Then I would mass from end of August. All right. So we're okay. Mini cut, then mass. In November, then maintain till December, beginning my next cut in 2018. My question is, does this sound reasonable, or would you recommend adjusting somehow, maybe doing more mini cut than mass sequences? Oh, and also be in Dublin in mid-May. Any recommendations, foods, sites, gyms? As always, thanks, guys. Yeah, I think that we covered that. Dublin recommendations, James?
Guinness Storehouse was really, really fun. Mike, we didn't do that when we were there, but Mel and I did it on a previous trip. If you like beer, Guinness Storehouse is a really fun experience. Man, there's so much good stuff in Dublin. Like the traditional Irish food is okay. Taco chips is like a Dublin staple. It's like fries with like taco seasoning and sauce on it. So taco chips is good. We didn't really do that many gym sightseeings. Our sponsors for the seminar took us to their gym, which was great. But man, if you want to get shitty at like a really like low profile kind of, I don't want to say divey, but like kind of like if your uncle owned a bar and you wanted to get fucked up, Dublin is like the place to go because everyone's really nice. You go to the bar and the bartenders are really cool, and it's people don't mind if you're a shit show either. So I liked Dublin. It was fun.
If you really want to party, I'm going to give you guys the download. Look up Jason Finan. Tell him Mel, James, and Mike sent you, and you will trust me. If he decides to go out with you, you will have a good ass time. If you survive, you will have a good time. You better be able to hold your liquor and beer, because goddamn,
he will be partying on your corpse.
And you bet your corpse will have the best time of his fucking life. Death. All right.
That guy was a tank. I could not believe.
Amazing. He's a superhero.
That's not easy.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not trying to brag at all, but he outdrank me, and I he's much smaller in stature than I, and he went out and partied after he outdrank us.
Unfazed by it all.
He just like went back out, was like, "Oh, you go to bed? All right, later."
Yep, that was amazing. All right, moving along to Renee, have fun in Europe. Don't die, don't kill anyone. And don't fall off the map. Say hi to us from Europe. We want Europe updates, god damn it. We want like week by week itinerary of what you're doing.
Maybe
who
we
you're
don't.
staying with. And Renee, if you get kidnapped and we don't hear from you, we're gonna film fucking Taken, where Melissa Davis comes to save your dumb ass by killing about 1,000 people who are trying to get you into the sex industry.
Hostel 7, European Vacation.
Melissa Davis is done asking questions and has started breaking necks. I don't know. I'm working here with something here.
Jason Statham, and Liam Neeson end up all in Europe together, and they're all pissed off. We don't know entirely why, but they're killing people, and you should watch.
I got it. Jason Statham as Melissa Davis in like, okay.
Wait, he can't play someone else. He's always himself.
For sure. You like, it's one of those based on a true story things where you look up the actual person. You're like, Melissa Davis. Wait a minute, she's a woman. What the fuck?
Oi, I've been doing that fucking jiu-jitsu. Blah, 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 blah.
We took a little creative license with this fucking film and we made me the hero instead of some fucking American bitch.
Oh, man. We gotta get Liam Neeson in there, too. Liam Neeson is a train conductor who is troubled with his past, but also is working, gets triangled. Something happens. Under Siege 17.
Oh, with cameo by Steven Seagal. Steven Seagal as the torpedo. All right, folks. Moving on. Leonard Morrison says, "Hey guys, hey Leonard. I appreciate your answers to my questions last week. That makes a lot of sense. I'm definitely sticking to the higher carb diet. Here's a follow-up question. I know fast adjusting carbs are useful immediately post-workout or a couple hours following it, but I'm trying to determine the minimum effective amount of simple carbs during this window. I'd like to keep as much of my overall carbs slow digesting as is reasonable. Should all carbs post-workout be fast digesting? No. Or mix in high GI and mid-range GI carbs? Maybe. Figure low GI carbs like oats don't really have a place in a couple of hours following a workout. They do. It's just fine. It's just not the most optimal if you're looking at single percentage points. I've also been drinking whey and 10 grams of dextrose intra-workout. Would I be better off skipping the dextrose intra-workout and just adding it to my post-workout shake? I'm not sure why you would do that. Which currently, don't do that. Which currently consists of 20 grams of dextrose, 24 grams of whey. I think that's fine. And 160 pounds, 11% body fat. And just trying to mass if that helps. Leonard, I think we can answer your question just by framing the trade-offs, but be curious maybe if you want to follow up as to why you want to maximize the amount of low GI carbs you're eating to begin with. I'm not sure why that's a goal you have. I would like some context because maybe we can answer better. But the reality is, if your first meal post-workout after your workout shake is like not super low GI, that's probably good. It doesn't have super high GI. So like something like fucking like sweet potatoes or whole grain bread or pasta, even oatmeal is totally fine. Just don't go out of your way to make it super low GI and shove a shitload of vegetables in there or something. And I think you're golden. I think we're splitting super fucking tiny hairs going anymore in route. Like if you were injecting insulin and shit like that post-workout, yeah, you would have to have much more particular advice. I have a feeling that that's not happening.
Yeah, and I agree with everything Mike said. The only thing I would add is if we really want to give you some numbers, regardless of whether they're high glycemic or low glycemic, somewhere around 1 gram per kilogram. So 160, that's like 75-ish, something like that. 75-ish grams, double check me on the math, is probably where you're going to top out on carbs in general, regardless of the glycemic index. So probably not necessarily in excess of that. Though if you're doing the high carb diet, you might find yourself having to take really big chunks like that at a time.
Sure. Yep. All right. I also have a question about mini cuts.
Great.
This is why, James. This is why.
I'm trying to do a mini cut, and I am a person. How is this different for me?
What about snakes? Do snakes mini cut?
Do snakes fit in
anything? I wonder if we can sneak into the mini cut ebook a snake on the cover, just somewhere, like a Easter egg.
Remember, Chris Soule did that during his dissertation defense. I don't
That's
remember
really
what it was.
Ballsy.
What was
that?
That
is fucking ballsy. I didn't have any fucking Easter eggs in my defense. I was just like shitting bricks.
I had an Easter egg in my defense talk.
Mel said she had one too.
What the fuck? Did you guys just know you were going to pass or some shit? Jesus. Dr. Stone, if you'd have seen that and been like, what is that? You're never passing.
No, we were too terrified. Chris, I'll have to group text the sports science group chat after this because I can't remember what it was.
Fuck.
It was something silly.
Yeah. All right. Also, I have a question about mini cuts. When it comes time to mini cut, I'm trying to determine how great of a deficit I can get away with without risking muscle loss. Because who likes dieting? And the quicker you get done with it, the better I feel. I've done short stretches of a protein-sparing modified fast style McDonald recommends in his rapid fat loss handbook in the past, but I am now wondering if that steep of a deficit doesn't inevitably result in muscle loss, even if only fall for 10 days. I think dieting to lose weight over 10 days, outside of like you want to look cool for the beach, is close to fucking pointless.
It's a poor strategy.
And unless you're on a shitload of drugs, that doesn't really work as far as resensitizing you to dick. I think that any cuts shorter than 3 weeks for drug-free individuals are just a fucking waste of time and just like needlessly stressful. So that being said, I think that 1% body weight per week, whatever deficit for you results in that, is what I would top out at. You can make an argument for 1.5% with special conditions, but I would not be interested in anything greater. James?
Same here. I think dieting for 10 days is kind of like you're not really dieting either way. You're kind of just mostly doing nothing on the net average. So.
I mean, it's funny. Like Lyle makes fun of short-term thinkers so much and bros so much. I honestly think like a part of him wrote the protocol for protein sparing modified fast just because people kept bugging him. Like, what's the fastest way I can lose fat in a short time? He's like, you know what? Fuck you. Here it is. Leave me the fuck alone. So.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess the thing is, like, how frequently do you have to run those 10 days to be meaningful? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the disruption to training is the biggest key there.
God damn it. Yes. Thank you for pointing that out because now you have asynchronous training and diet again.
Yeah, goodbye momentum. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, that came up a couple webinars ago where it's like, well, now my diet, my training don't match up. So it's like, well, fuck it. What are you doing? Like, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And I think that actually, if he was on speaking terms with me, Lyle would greatly support the following statement. I think that protein sparing modified fast is a cool and effective tool for some people. But for most individuals that are recreational and into health and fitness and just want to look good, et cetera, comes with some really nasty downsides because the idea of the short, it's almost like a detox or a cleanse. People end up just eating like shit, modified fast. Eating like shit, modified fast. And they get basically just binge eating disorder at that point. So,
and like the 10 days where you're eating clean is not going to make you like a healthy whole person again. You're still fucked up. You have issues.
100%. Fucked up. Like everybody sucks.
Have you seen that Seth Rogen meme where he's like kind of naked and like looking like this? And it's like after eating a salad for the first time in a long time, and it's like him like in nature. It's like that, right? Feel clean and feel special, but you still got shit.
100%. Exactly. You got shit on your inside and your soul. All right. And add on to the first question, roughly what percentage of fats are fine to include in my first meal post-workout? Or should it just really be as close to zero as possible? Close to zero as possible is fine. I think anything shy of 10% is golden. Shy of 20% is fine. 30% and above is just like you're just not trying.
Try to get around like using percentages per, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a complicated way of saying it. But I think as for most people, most sizes, as far as grams, if you're under 10 grams of fat in your post-workout meal, you're fucking winning at life, as Broderick would say. If you're under 20, you're doing just fine. If you can't keep it under 30, what the fuck are you eating?
It's like bacon,
German food,
eggs, German food. German food's good. Mike wasn't a fan. Mike had a big old meatloaf.
I just ordered the wrong shit, man. I got burned. You know, there's been numerous times where I've ordered the wrong stuff and I just got burned. Like Korean food, I really like it now that I know what I want to order. But the first time I went to a Korean restaurant with Mel, actually, I got like a dead fish head, and I was like, "What the fuck?"
Was it really a head?
It was the whole fucking fish, dude. But there was just not any meat. It was just dead. You know what I'm talking about? It's dead fish.
My dad was so pissed. Like, he looked at the waiter like, "What the fuck is this?" And the waiter was like, "Do I need to dress the fish for you?" He's like, "Yes, I don't know how to do this.
Unreal. So German food I loved it, but especially one time. Here's the story, folks, to keep it short and sweet. I ordered meatloaf in Germany. It's not meatloaf like you would think. It's just a piece of slightly heated bologna that's thicker.
It's like a bologna steak. Yeah.
Like a bologna steak. I was like, this is not a quality of food in the United States. If you serve that to a United States restaurant patron, they would literally get violent because they'd be like, I'm not paying you to serve me Walmart bologna at a fucking restaurant.
Dude, so like we had like the pretzels and the beer and like the schnitzel, and Mike had like a bite of his bologna steak and he was like, James, do you want it? And I was like, yeah. And I ate like all that shit. He was like,
God, let's trade.
Sour look on his face, like,
Yeah, I'm that guy. I'm the guy that gets burned ordering the wrong thing. All right. Next question from Leonard. How do you guys handle training when sick with a cold? Is it advisable to keep training if you feel capable, or is it best to just take the time off? The answer is rather simple. If you have peripheral symptoms only, like runny nose, a sore throat, etc., then it's fine to train and to do recovery days, like a deload workout. It's not fine to train hard. If you have central symptoms like fever, etc., like bone pain, you need to just leave the fucking gym because, first of all, your bitch ass is getting everybody else sick. Yeah. And second of all, you're just going to die if you show up there. I actually did do a rack deadlift, a partial deadlift with over 600 pounds when I had the full-blown fever from the flu. It was a religious experience. It was really enlightening, actually. I would not recommend it to anybody. It's like an ayahuasca trip, I'm told.
Jesus.
So I didn't shit myself.
Ugh. Yeah. So like the thing is like illness can impair performance, but then also like performance can impair existing illness at the same time. So if you go and lift when you're feeling kind of sick, like Mike said, maybe just peripheral, nothing too crazy, you might be like, yeah, I can tough through it, but that actually might push you into full-blown sickness at the same time. So light exercise is okay. Overloading really hard exercise, not recommended.
Yep. So if you take the time off, would you pick back up where you left off in the meso when you return, or is it better to just take a deload week? I don't think you have to take a whole week.
No.
If you do a flu, whole week and then just restart. But if you just get fucked a little bit, I think like a half a week deload is like a super thing I use all the time. It's like 2 or 3 recovery sessions in a row, and then next week you're back to jamming. I would restart the week that you missed, but restart it at full blast and keep going.
Yeah, I agree with that totally.
All right. Alex P. Sup, Mike and James.
Sup, Alex?
I actually feel bad dragging down the intellectual level here with bro science stuff.
Can you give us your thoughts?
Yeah, for real. This would be a good podcast question. No offense, Alex. So, give us your thoughts and scientific perspective on feeder workouts. James, stay calm.
Wait,
stay calm.
What?
Stay calm. Feeder workouts for lagging, stubborn body parts. For example, Rich Piana popularized these, by the way. For example, training arms 5 times per week in the evenings with 3 sets of 50 to 100 reps. Several bros documented their experiments on it on YouTube. As much science as I need, and seem to actually make gains with it. Is there any merit to real world application to it? So first thing, not to be pedantic, bros make gains with all kinds of shit. There's massive selection bias there, and also good genetics, and also just make gains from all kinds of training that's not necessarily optimal. Second of all, instead of doing that weird shit, which will work just because you add volume. Remember, anytime you add volume, you probably get gains as long as you're not topping out your MRV. Why don't you just put in arm workouts more frequently and properly periodize and program them so that you could have the best of both worlds?
You know, anything that's like 50 to 100 reps, you are largely running the risk of doing junk volume. Now, you can get around that, but for the most part, I would say, I'm just going to make this up, but I would say three quarters or like 75% of the time, that's going to be junk volume, mostly a waste. Because you could do the same. You could just do 3 sets of 10 with a more reasonable weight, and at the very least, you'll be getting stronger. I mean, like 50 to 100, I can't imagine. First of all, Mike, have you ever done a set of 100?
One set? Absolutely not.
I don't think I could do a set of 100 with the easy bar. I think I would just crap out at some point. It didn't matter how much weight was on the bar. It could be the bar. It could be the bar plus 10 pounds. I would crap out at 45 reps or something either way. You know what I mean? Or it doesn't matter.
Yeah. You have to really lose some 5-pound dumbbells or something.
I'm having a hard time wrapping my brain around this one. Sorry, buddy. I'm not trying to attack you, but this is bad.
Yeah, no, I mean, like it'll work for a lot of people just because they're just doing more volume. But it's one of those things people say, like, if you want a bigger back, just do like chin ups or pull ups like every day and do like 50 chins every day or whatever. Why not just structure it into normal back? You know, nobody tells you that the best legs you're going to develop are going to be from you just doing like bodyweight squats every day. That's fucking ridiculous. But it'll work if you're insufficiently trained. It's just not the best way to do it.
So what's here's where you can see this idea falling apart, right? Like for biceps, people might kind of give it a little more time, but like, okay, so let's say I wanted to do a feet or quad program. Am I going to do 3 sets of 100 in the squat?
Yeah, it's retarded.
Like,
I don't know what the fuck.
really
What's a feeder? Why does this
idea falls apart, right? The fatigue cost is so ridiculous that like,
yeah.
And like, what are you doing at that? I don't know if I could do 100 bodyweight squats. I've never tried.
Yeah, I certainly can. I definitely can't.
I don't know if I could, and it's not like a macho thing. I don't
for sure.
I don't think anyone it's possible for me to do that.
Anyone in the bro community is going to be trying that anytime soon.
I mean, even like occluded bodyweight squats, I think I could get to like 30, but that's probably about it.
Be a lot of rest pause.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
All right, Daniel Lingemann. I'm really enjoying doing the male physique templates 3 times a day, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and doing an Olympic lifting class on Tuesday and Thursday. As much as anything else, the weightlifting keeps me involved in the community at my gym. I was wondering how you would recommend splitting up days if I moved to the 4-day MPT, but still did the only class on Tuesday and Thursday. What days should I do MPT? I could do it like Tuesday only, Wednesday rest, Thursday only, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday male physique.
You know, honestly, we can just this one on the butt. It really doesn't matter as long as you have 2 days of rest and as long as your Oli days don't significantly overlap with like your leg days. I don't really.
Yeah, keep your leg days the fuck away from your weightlifting days and try to do your volume work more after your weightlifting cluster than before. You want to be as fresh, especially in your legs, for weightlifting as possible. Whatever program design lets you do that, that's best. So a lot of times you're going to be doing your legs right after the weightlifting stuff. That would be like if you could align your leg workouts to be literally the day after or the same day but later in the evening of your weightlifting, that would be great. Otherwise, you're going to run into some shit.
Yeah.
Also, just be careful you're not biting off more than you can chew here, Daniel.
Yeah, you have two distinctly, like you have 2 programs that are on polar opposite ends. Keep that in mind.
Yeah. Just for total volume might be a lot. Also, with exercise selection, should I be selecting exercises that complement my weightlifting lifts or ones that are as different as possible to round out development? For example, I haven't done military press with MPT because jerk accessory work kind of does the same thing. Is that right, or should I be using exercise that benefit weightlifting? I'm not interested in competing or anything. I just really like those lifts, and I've been friends with people in the class for years. You'd have to tell us if you want to be okay at weightlifting or competent at it and also look as best as possible and long-term want to prevent overuse injuries versus if you want your male physique template to supplement your actual weightlifting, which actually is just not designed to do. So I'll nip this one in the bud and say choose exercises considerably different from your weightlifting so that there's not as much overlap, thus fatigue problems and accumulating joint problems. If you do want to make your male physique template, if you want your adjacent training, which is currently your male physique template, to be potentiating of your weightlifting performance, you need a weightlifting accessory program.
So I'm going to just throw this out there, and it's probably going to get some more hate, but when you think about physique and weightlifting, they really are polar opposite sports. And you might think like, that's not true. They're both like, you both lift weights in that sport. Yeah, one's done as forcefully and as explosively as possible. The other one is done for complete vanity, and it's just done for high-level repetitions, right? So you have 2 conflicting programs, and at the very foundation of what you're doing, they are on opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Where you have one that's really, really high fatigue, really, really high MRV, one that's really, really low. You cannot expect to do both of those things well at the same time. So what Mike was suggesting, I think, was excellent, and you probably want to pick one that's most important to you and then roll with that.
Yep.
And everything else will be compromised after that. We say, like, this is physique is most important, weightlifting, I make some compromises, or vice versa.
Yep. The next one I'll just answer really short. Daniel Keller asks, is there any good method to balance out a lot of cardio with strength training in the Army, trying to keep my 5 mile at an easy 8-minute pace? Yes, there absolutely is. It is called the Hybrid Method. It is a book by Alex Viada. Google, purchase, read, enjoy. It works super awesome.
Yeah, and if you're in like a strength phase and you're really focused on gaining strength, the maintenance volume you need to maintain an 8-minute pace in the mile, not much. You know what I mean?
Not much.
Or 5 mile. Sorry, wait, 5 mile at an easy 8-minute pace. Wait a minute,
8 minute per
miles?
mile pace, 5
8 minute
miles.
per mile. Okay. So slightly more complicated than an 8-minute mile pace, but not. You don't need to do a ton. So Alex's book
Yep.
is great. But just
Yep.
keep in mind you don't need to do a lot.
Yep. If he's looking for a method, there is a method.
Yeah.
All right. Sebastian Hayes. Hey guys, I have a question for maintaining leg size. I just started a new job as a bartender waiter, so I have to walk around and stand for 40 hours a week. Before I was just sitting. I also dance once a week for 5 hours. The day after working/dancing, my legs are so sore that I'm wondering if it's enough for maintaining my legs. They are growing from everything and are my best body part, so I assume it is enough, but would love your opinion on that. You won't know, Sebastian, until you try. And if you start losing size and or strength, then you're going to know it's not enough. I think you still need to lift weights, but maybe you can lift weights like once a week or just twice a week with super low volumes because the dancing is explosive in nature and maintains your leg size because you have the genetics anyway. You're working and walking around is sure as fuck not going to maintain your leg size. That's a good recipe to actually reduce it. But the dancing, depending on the kind of dancing it is, could be helping a little bit, James.
Yeah, I agree with Mike. I would say the dancing is helping at best, but not sufficient to maintain leg size.
Yeah,
You will
it's unlikely.
probably need to do legs. I would also recommend getting an exoskeleton so that you can stand at ease while you're bartending.
Oh, that's a really good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Sebastian, Crystal, what's up, honey? You gave me a look?
No, no.
I've been farting a lot,
Motherfucker's getting in trouble.
bitch. Anyway, my lovely wife to be. All right. I can only train. Next question from Sebastian. I can only train my side delts with dumbbell upright rows and dumbbell lateral raise due to shoulder problems, so I can't use easy bars or barbells. How would you program with only 2 variants? I would include cables. I'm just kidding. All right. 1 meso with just dumbbell, but seriously, you can consider like rope face pulls and stuff. Those might not hurt. 1 meso with just dumbbell upright rows and 1 different sessions and mix the rep range for both variants and 1 meso, but the next meso I have no new variants. Mix rep ranges a lot, mix progression schemes a lot, mix bent over versions versus standing versions, start moving your fingers. So one lateral raise thing you can run for weeks and months is pinkies up lateral raises, which I'm currently doing now, which target more the rear and side delt versus just the side delt, and then later just do conventional. Those are some ideas.
Yeah, those are great. I would say you could do like front raises, bent over rear raises, lateral raises. You could add supersets, stuff
Tons
like
of shit.
tons
Giant
of stuff.
sets. It says, I have the
let's
same thing
call-
for my biceps exercises. Would appreciate if you could tackle it in general. I mean, just Google different bicep dumbbell variants. There's a fucking like
There's
dozens
infinity.
of them.
Yeah, I mean, like you just make one up on the spot if you want. There's tons. What's that other one? Mike, what's that stupid thing we used to see in strength conditioning? It was like eyes wise tees, where you do like the bent over shoulder movements. People would do them as prehab, but that's like another thing where you could be like angled, basically like laying on a bench, like angled shoulder raises of various angles.
Yeah, sure, totally. Yeah,
Creative with it. Yeah, I mean, it's not always the most perfect movement, but you can certainly add some variation.
Yep. Katina Desjardins.
By the way, Mel was commenting that she's been looking mighty buff lately on her, I don't know, Instagram or Facebook or whatever. Yeah.
Damn, Katina. Got it, girl.
Get it, girl.
She says, good evening, doc. Just finishing up a cut and I'm transitioning to maintenance, let's be honest, maintenance phase. And I'm curious about your thoughts on approaching the nutrition setup with a strong favor towards carbohydrate. This will be my first time venturing away from the templates in about 18 to 20 months. Certain death. I'm interested in experimenting with the following. The initial macronutrient layout would be 2 grams per kilogram of protein, 3.7 grams per kilograms of carb. Okay. And eventually 5 grams per kilograms or hopefully higher. 0.65 grams per kilograms fat.
0.65. I thought it was 65 for a second. I was like, wait a minute.
Sweet. That sounds good. With my training intensity and the number of steps I tend to take in a day, this falls into maintenance calorie levels. Haven't noticed any hormonal issues bringing fats to below 1 gram per kilogram in the past with the addition of EPA, DHA supplementation. Would I still be at risk for unnecessary joint stress? Almost certainly not. Am I once again unnecessarily splitting hairs? No. Anecdotally, my body tends to perform much better to high carbs. I don't really find myself missing fats too much. Thank you for your input. So, Katine, I'll put you this way. Myself and several other individuals, some of whom take special sports supplements, so you would think testosterone production is not even an issue, have noticed that when we get below that 0.6 gram per kilogram in fats, sex drive starts to really disappear. Notice we are hypercaloric and sports supplements are involved. So how the fuck is this happening? Well, there's deeper shit. It's not even hormonal at that point. It's intracellular that is probably not only affecting sex drive, but probably adaptive proclivity and gain proclivity as well. So I really am out of the habit of recommending, through many, many experiments of my own and with others, any fats more aggressive than 0.6 or lower. But I think somewhere between 0.6 and 0.8, most individuals will find their happy place where they don't need any more fats to get any more effect. That's what you have to find. Start at the low end. If you feel great, awesome. Try a little bit more fat. If you feel even better, do that. But if you don't feel different, go back to the low one and hit it. James?
Yeah, I think that's great.
All right. Felipe Machado, Mr. Machado himself.
We met up with Felipe in Europe. It was fun.
The man. This question might be more for Dr. James.
We shall see.
It's been a month that I can't sleep properly without medication, which I use a couple of times a week. You already know about the night shift context, working too many hours, etc. But the new variable is that the sun has been rising earlier, stronger, and it's warmer right now. I think the combination of it being with it being sedentary for a few good months might be causing it. I can't think of any other factors besides psychologicals, which I'm ignoring because I don't feel any kind of anxiety or stress even towards very important things. I'd be surprised if it was any psychological factor that's causing it. The question is, do you think the factors I mentioned could be what's really causing this insomnia? Do you think getting back to the gym even twice a week would help me?
Yes.
Once I had, I would agree with that. I would also say stay the fuck away from shift work if you can, because just a goddamn mishmash. Once I had a similar question, and you mentioned the use of melatonin. Could you explain more about how it works, etc.? James?
So I think, just to kind of go a quick answer on this, I think being more physically active and increasing like your just general fatigue throughout the day is a good way of promoting sleep. So I think we met Felipe, and he let us know he hasn't really been training very much lately for various reasons. And I think getting back on the bandwagon if possible. And I know he mentioned he was trying to work more to save money, to potentially maybe go to school or some other things, yada, yada, yada. But I think, trying to train maybe 2 to 4 times per week will help you get better rest. I think the bigger problem is really because you're a shift worker and you're starting to see some daytime shifts. Those are all normal. I think something like melatonin can be useful. Unfortunately, I cannot explain mechanistically how it works. I do know, however, that taking melatonin around the time that you're planning on sleeping does help you reset some of your circadian rhythms to that time. So a couple doses, like once or twice, and usually that can really help people get back on track with a sleep schedule that has kind of fallen apart.
If you're going to sleep at a similar time every night.
Right. It has to be at the same time. So mechanistically, I'm not sure. That would be a better question for a psychologist. But I do know that it does seem to be efficacious for people who are having sleep problems, especially with inconsistencies in their schedule. And that does seem to help kind of lock down, like, this is the time I need to go to bed. Yep. So I think that could be useful. Yeah, definitely.
Yep. Very good stuff. Unrelated question. How many reps in reserve should I do and how to progress from there? Considering I'm getting back to training after being sedentary for a good few months, I would say 6 to 8 reps in reserve for weeks and weeks and weeks, building up weight on the bar super slowly and set numbers super slowly. And then eventually, when the weight is respectable and when the set numbers are respectable, you can start to get into the 4 or less RAR and cycle normally.
Yep. Take it slow.
Do not use a lot of weight early, because your muscles may still be used to some techniques, but your tendons may have weakened and muscles may have weakened. So it's a good way to snap your shit up. A lot of bodybuilders who have taken time off come back and just hit it hard with heavy weights and literally like tear pecs off the bone and stuff. Don't do that.
We saw this motherfucker trying to do dips with like 100 kilos or something. And I saw
super impressive, but also highly fucking pointy. Did you see me get pissed?
That is what?
Did you see me get pissed?
I saw you scolding him. Yes.
Yeah, I was like, you know me, man. I don't scold very many people. I was like, Felipe, what the fuck are you doing? Don't do that. All right.
My thing, and I look over, and Mike's like, and I was like, ooh, girl, someone's getting in trouble.
Question for Dr. Mike from Felipe, not sport related, but long ago I heard a podcast where you mentioned you had problems with ADD, ADHD. Could you comment on how you overcame it, which strategies you've used, or anything you think might be useful for someone similar situation?
I'm going to pee real quick. Sorry, while you're talking.
Oh. Felipe, the honest answer is I think I probably need to do like a podcast about it or something, or like a webinar, special webinar, maybe maybe like a Facebook Live, and I'll certainly announce that once it comes, or if all these things are recorded, so I'll tell you afterwards. There's a lot of detail here. I'd have to write down everything and sort of arrange it into a speech. I'm also not super qualified, as I do not have any degrees in psychological sciences, so shit that worked for me may very well not work for anyone, or may will be contrary to what is recommended. But the short version, and eventually I'd have to do a longer version, is that I started with a certain small attention span, and I incrementally increased it through just trying to pay attention on schoolwork. At the time, it was schoolwork for longer. And then when I get really mentally fatigued, I would take a break, do something else, come back for a little fresh, pay attention sort of until fatigued, etc. It's almost like progressive overload training, where you approach your maximal threshold, back off and adapt, and then do that over and over. So challenge yourself, but don't over fatigue yourself. This is almost like anything else. Like I knew that I could only handle a certain volume of schoolwork per day, per session, per day, and per week, and I just wouldn't exceed that. I still use those same principles in all of my work. Like I work a lot. I do a lot of work. Mostly because I'm a workaholic, or some other crazy Russian Jewish shit. But I always take appropriate breaks, and I never do too much work in a week than I think I can. If I feel intellectual overreaching coming, I back off because I know that I don't want to cross that precipice too much. But basically, admit where you're starting off from, start off easy, and do more work. So meditation and shit like that, and mindset helps, but I'll cover that in the more expanded version at some point. All right. Hopefully that was good enough. James, are you back?
I'm back, and I actually
right?
struggle with the same issue. I have pretty bad ADD, and actually leaving our professor jobs has actually caused it to resurge in a really nasty way. So I feel your pain. Something that I've done that is just useful for me is I usually I can't work for more than about an hour before my quality of work goes down, and I'm just looking at things and not actually doing stuff. So I usually do little blocks where I'll do like RP work for an hour, then I'll do house projects for an hour, and then I'll play like video games or have relaxation for an hour, and then I'll kind of cycle through those things throughout the day. That's kind of my pattern that I try to do. And when I run out of stuff to do, I start hovering over Mel and seeing what she's doing, and I'm like bothering her, like, "Hey, did you do this or that?" And she's like, "Get the fuck out of here! Go do something else. Get a job."
Yeah,
So,
Mel definitely does not have ADD, because that bitch can just mull for like 10 hours straight through some shit. That's super impressive.
she won't move from the couch. She'll just work for hours at a time.
Machines. All right. Mercia Balai says, "Hey, docs, having a combination of whey and casein, do the two clump together in the stomach and the casein slows down the absorption rate of whey, or are the two absorbed separately?" It's a little bit of a mix, so they actually mix together, and the clumping is sort of clumping. So from the literature I've read, it's an intermediate frequency of release or timing of release. So like it averages out to like, I guess, 3 to 4 hours, kind of. Like it's almost like chicken at that point. Curious about this because I see that Dr. Mike uses 0% fat milk, which is, to the best of my knowledge, 80% casein, 20% whey. A scoop of whey post-workout. Would this make the shake roughly 60% whey and 40% casein? Yep. Such a mixture be optimal as opposed to whey and water. I already have the whey and water before I have that meal. One step ahead. And if so, is the effect because whey casein mixture because of the insulinogenic effect of milk? It's combinatorial, my friend. It all adds up. But remember that I have a post-workout shake already, so this is my post-workout meal, which means we are looking for longer time courses of release. James, you see these motherfuckers trying to test my shit?
I just love that everyone like analyzes what you do so hard. That's what I like.
I think you said it properly. Analyzes is correct.
Like,
P.S. Dr. James, would you recommend beer post-workout as a carb source? JK, LOL.
God, people, like there's papers that are published that suggest that that's a good idea, and I don't suggest that's a good idea, but
I hate those papers.
Yeah,
I hate the people that publish them. This is a fucking joke.
Well, okay, so like it has a slight amount of merit in the sense that like because beer has carbohydrate and salt, it absorbs relatively quickly, and so that's great for rehydration. But then it's offset by the negative effects of alcohol, which is a direct down regulator of anabolism. So
All right, talk about hipster research.
yeah, it's kind of funny, but the net is bad. So let's just
yeah. All right, it says regarding post-workout carbs, would a mixture of fast carb sources be superior to a single source when taken in high amounts, dextrose and maltodextrin? Yeah, especially for endurance athletes and stuff, it seems like a mixture of glucose and fructose is actually best, and maybe some longer branches would be best because they occupy different receptors, and you can saturate glucose receptors without fructose receptors. Then the next question you have to ask is, what the fuck are you using the fructose for? It's highly complicated and highly probably irrelevant. If you just aim for higher GI sources and eat a bunch of them, I think you're good to go. Any more specificity than that requires a degree of speculation I'm becoming increasingly uncomfortable with making because it's all guesswork.
also
Just aim for the rough averages, and everything else is up to the individual to adjust based on their perception.
Mike, what's the footwork needed to actually like start breaking down the grams of this sugar versus that sugar? Like it's just ridiculous, right? It's
for sure. Yeah, if you got insulin that you're using injectable, you will have to do that stuff. But if you don't, I don't think it makes a fucking bit of difference.
Yeah, just too much.
Yeah. Notice, by the way, the kind of people that talk about this, like cyclic dextrin and all this other shit, they're insulin users, which is sweet because they're getting super jacked. But that shit comes with its own complexities. So save that for when it matters.
Yeah.
Daniel Jelly says, "Hi guys," and he misspelled guys, I think ironically. Considering the quote or the maximization of area under the curve of insulin transport to muscle tissue receptors, think there would be a net positive to muscle hypertrophy if one increased glucose intake, but then spent precisely that surplus energy on cardio later in the day, or NEAT if that case is different.
I'm not sure if I follow the logic here.
I think I do. So basically, like the more insulin you can secrete, the more anabolic shit is. But then you get a problem where you you start gaining a shitload of weight because you're secreting a ton of insulin and eating a ton of food with it, and the food needed to get as much insulin as possible to be secreted starts to add up and make you too fat. So he's saying, what about if we burn off that extra fat or energy in whatever way it appears in cardio later that day or NEAT? I think the cardio burns up probably just as much muscle as you're getting out of the insulin, and you're back to square one. There's a middle ground where eating a shitload of food and doing quite a bit, but not too much cardio and NEAT is good. And anything past that amount is just going to be counterbalancing, and eventually the insulin won't even be winning and the cardio will be winning. To put that in the following perspective, endurance cyclists are small motherfuckers because they're eating, their insulin area under the curve is massive. It puts bodybuilders to shame. They do so much cardio, it fucks all of that back in the ass. So there's only like a little bit of cardio a couple times a week is what a lot of good bodybuilders have found is great for maximizing that insulin area under the curve and making you more sensitive. But any more than that, and you're fighting your own losing battle there.
I think what's reasonable here too is just like keeping tabs on your gain rates, right? So like you won't have much of a problem if you're gaining a reasonable amount of body weight per week. There's no, and then if you just start doing cardio, then you're increasing like your negative cellular signaling in terms of muscle growth, right? So that, like Mike said earlier, it's kind of a net balance of net zero, right? So monitoring your body weight gains is probably going to be the most effective strategy for maximizing that effect.
Yeah, Daniel, you'll find this funny. I know you like to be intellectually stimulated. There were some brave new world theorists back in the early 90s, I believe, recounted to me by Mr. Broderick Chavez, of course, that figured out that if you could put the most anabolic stimulus to use and the most fat catabolic stimulus to use, that on the net balance, this would be the way to get more lean and jacked. And some individuals tried to apply this simultaneously, which is another reason why the phasic approach is better, because the total body burden of multiple modalities together is crazy. Here's what these folks did. They would slam a shitload of gear, a shitload of insulin. Gear is anabolic steroids, by the way. And they would also take DNP, which is a radically effective fat burner, at the same time. So basically, they'd have to eat so much food to fit their insulin use and so much food to counteract
Offset.
the DNP use. And then they would hypothetically gain muscle while losing fat at the same time, or just gain muscle for a long time without ever gaining fat. And it actually did work, but the amount of total organ stress was so massive that people survive this in a literal sense, but it's just nothing we're basically talking about like a 250-pound person consuming 9,000 calories per day, daily. Like, you just don't keep that up. The better approach is to do a proper mass phase where you only take half of that equation. And then after that, you keep the muscle and do a proper cutting phase where you do only the other half of that equation, and then you restart. It's just the sheer ballsiness of that has to be appreciated. Of like, you know what, we're going to cut mass at the same time through the brilliance of chemistry. It's like, you're human, you will not survive that much chemistry.
Fuck.
Also, trying not to die from all that at the same time, I'm sure was a real fun game, like a board game. That'd be a sweet board game where like you have like a certain drug stack that you're taking, right? Like you get like a card at the beginning of the game that lists your drugs, and you roll the dice and you land on like you either add or subtract something from your drug stack, and it's like, you add DNP, make the adjustments to your diet. You're like, Jesus Christ, I can't keep this up.
That sounds like a fun D&D game. Like, you found the wizard syringe. You can take anything for 2 rounds.
Oh my God, that'd be amazing. And then one of them, like, there's like, if you roll like snake eyes, you just like, you misdosed your insulin. You're in the hospital and you lost your leg. You're like, oh, okay, this game sucks.
Insulin into your companion's eyeball. They take.
Dude, that's a good idea. We need to make this board game. I think it would just be hilarious.
Oh my God.
Anyway,
I'm thinking about D&D now.
There you go. Tony Drotnell says, hey guys, welcome back after thinking about it for several years. God damn. I don't think I've ever thought about anything for several years. I've decided to get back into karate at a very low level. I found a sensei whose philosophy I like and who understands that it is a distant second priority for me behind hypertrophy training, so he won't kill me with fitness warm-ups. Good thinking.
Good.
I'm planning to go to class once a week and to drill the technique at home by myself for 15 to 20 minutes a few times a week. How frequently do you guys think I should have these short sessions to retain the technique I learned in class? Every 2 to 3 days at least, James?
Yeah, I think that's good. Just keep in mind, like, especially for something like karate, your back and your hip flexors are probably what's going to crap out on you before anything else, where you're like, oh, I don't feel that tired from practicing these techniques. And then you're going to try and deadlift or squat, and you're going to realize, like, oh man, all the spinning and twisting really took a bigger toll than I realized, and I'm having a hard time. Just keep that in mind. I've had that same problem with kickboxing, where I can kickbox until I'm black and blue, but the first thing that gives out is actually my back, just from all the rotation. So just keep that in mind.
My bake. Yeah, good thinking, J-Mo. Oh, right. We got 3 questions, and then we're going to shut it down. 3 questions on the live.
Damn.
Sebastian Hayes says, do you think it is necessary to take multivitamin pills? What date is it today? April 24th. Do you think it is necessary to take multivitamin pills while massing if you can't eat so many veggies and fruits because of that many calories? Thanks. I don't know if it's necessary, but I would recommend it. I take multivitamins, and I take a mixed green supplement because I reduce my greens intake when I'm massing. James?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary, but probably still in your favor. It's probably not a bad idea.
Yeah, it certainly comes with almost no downside.
Yeah. Outside of just taking the pill. Do you ever gag on your stuff? Like swallowing pills?
Man, I'm pretty good at taking pills at this point in my life. Yes, and it's always terrible, and I hate it.
Yeah, it sucks.
Julian Hero says, hey, docs, coming up to an end of a massing meso, planning my next meso now. My legs are huge in comparison to the rest of my body. 5'10", 196, 28-inch legs. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to put them on the back burner and focus on my upper body. I was thinking about focusing on strength for my legs and hypertrophy for the rest of my body. Would you recommend that, or is it better to just keep them at MEV, MV? Remember, strength training for your legs is very like MEV and MV, so both would be probably about the same. Just push the weight more.
I would, I think both are okay. I think from a specificity standpoint, probably doing the same thing that you're doing and bringing it down to MEV or MV is probably better, especially when you consider like doing high bar or low bar squats and or deadlifts for sets of 5. The systemic fatigue that you get from that is probably going to crap out the rest of what you're doing on your upper body. So doing sets of like 10, like 2 sets of 10 might be easier to manage than doing like 2 to 3 sets of 5 on the rest of your body.
Totally. So maybe try strength training, but if it's too intense and it's really fucking your upper body up, then you might have to.
Especially if you're strong. You know, if you have big, strong legs too, it might be.
Yeah. Totally. That's a good point. Katina DeJarnett says, thank you for the thorough answer and thanks for the compliment, Dr. Mel. I will take these ranges in consideration when trying this out. Is always much appreciated. Super, super, super.
Yeah.
All right. Last, Daniel Jelly says, yeah, RE anabolism of insulin versus catabolism cardio. I was thinking like 450 grams versus 500 grams with 50 grams worth of cardio much later in the day, or neat. My guess was there'd be some kind of sweet spot. Yes, there would be.
Yeah.
I don't do any cardio now, but if there would be a net crane cup of carbs, extra 50 grams a day, then say an excuse to walk to the shop at night or something, I'll do it. I think that's worth it, but I think much more than that's probably not. James?
Yeah, I think that's fine. More than that, just balances out.
Yeah. And then he says, hey, Dr. Mike, I've noticed Broderick seems quite averse to intra-workout nourishment, or at least doesn't think it's worthwhile. Well, then we're almost in agreement because James and I think it counts for about 2%.
Yeah.
From my reading, GLUT4 muscle cell surface density increases both in the presence of stress training and reduced glycogen, almost as if we're homeostatic. So it seems that even if you don't supplement with insulin, it's probably worthwhile to have at least a concentration of glucose intake during the workout. Well, remember that if you don't have glucose intake during the workout, you become so insulin sensitive during that time that all the glucose you take in after will be absorbed even faster than if you take nothing during. So I think it balances out almost completely. For longer workouts, more than 2 hours, just for the performance enhancing and anti-catabolic benefits, I would recommend some carbohydrate, but within like an hour of training and this stuff, I don't think that fucking much matter.
Yeah, totally. Within an hour or so, there's like no difference. But for longer workouts, like overreaching workouts or endurance workouts, yeah, it's probably worth your time.
Yeah. Well, that concludes this episode.
Damn, this is a long one. Like 2 hours.
Unreal. These people with their entitlement, they think they're paying us for this.
It's funny too because we get the podcast questions are so bad and these ones are so good. It's a weird dichotomy.
It's really cream of the crop. Well, I'll tell you, these are the people that are willing to pay for shit. You know, like different market. Yeah, it'd be like, man, the drivers of the cars they paid for are different than the drivers of the free cars. It'd be like, yep, I told you that.
Yeah, no shit. Wasn't somebody complaining about the podcast where they're like, it's like silly, but it's just not that good or something?
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, it's free.
There's too many jokes, not enough knowledge. We're like, you fucking assholes. We have everything else we put out as knowledge. Go fuck yourself. Folks, the podcast is not designed to make money. It's not designed to make us famous. It's literally just for fun. So if you don't like it, you can kindly go fuck yourself in the ass.
Yeah. Although that one
might feel good.
I definitely had like some hate spillover from the last one.
Too much hate.
100%. All right. Well, Dr. Mike, I think we're going to wrap it up for today. We actually had quite a few really good questions this week. Yeah, so I was impressed. Awesome. Thought it went really well.
Awesome work, folks.
All right. Well, we're back on our normal schedule. Are you around next week or are you traveling?
Around for the next multiple weeks. So we're good.
Oh, okay, cool. So we'll be back on schedule on normal time, same bat time, same bat channel, and keep sending those good questions. Jan, why don't you stagger them a little bit next time, huh?
Fucking asshole.
I was actually his English writing is actually pretty good. I was
calling me impressed.
Yeah. All right. We're wrapping it up. Thanks, guys. Talk to you next soon.